All right.
All right.
Do the honors.
So here we are, podcast number 4, Keeping Tabs. Our wonderful guest, Lindsey, here. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Lindsey Chadwick. I'm a licensed professional counselor and marriage and family counselor candidate.
Nice. What does candidate mean in that?
It means I'm working on my LMFT license, but I don't have all of my supervised hours. It's a big old hoop I have to jump through first.
Okay, so I gotta knock out lots of hours.
Yeah, 3,000 direct hours with clients.
Oh, wow.
Do you have to do that in a certain period of time, or is it just once you're done, you are licensed?
It can't be less than 2 years, and I have 4 years to do it.
Okay.
So in between 2 and 4. Got it.
Yeah. So I already have a license, but I decided I needed 2.
Right on.
So how many years of school did you have to go through to get to where you're at?
You have to have a bachelor's and then a master's program, and it took me 4 years, so 8.
Okay.
8 total of college.
Is there any upkeep you have to do after you receive the licensure? So that, yeah, I figured as much. How many hours do you have to do a year?
You have to do 40 continuing ed credits a year. It depends on your licensure, because there are a couple different credentialing bodies, but you have to do 40 hours a year of continuing ed after you get licensed.
That makes sense, because I can't imagine there's like a guy from the 70s who got licensed and he's just still prescribing, cocaine for ghosts in people's blood.
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, the hours that you can do, you can pick anything. And that can include like reading a book. So you can still be a bad therapist and keep up with your hours.
Nice. Well, since you're a credentialed therapist, what's wrong with us? What's wrong with Adam?
Yeah.
I've been asking. I have a pretty long dossier myself, but I'm not credentialed, so.
I don't know. What do you think is wrong with you, Adam?
I'm not sure. This is why we brought you on, though.
This is actually just free therapy for us, yeah.
Perfect. I love that.
On a serious note, though, can you explain to me, because I don't really understand it, and this is term that's thrown around constantly on the internet. What is gaslighting? What is like the definition of gaslighting? Because everybody who talks about gaslighting, I feel like is just people who are the easiest way to like get out of gaslighting is just to like, you're gaslighting me. And then it's like, no, you gaslit me. And then now both people have gaslit each other. It's like, who's wrong and who's right?
It's
I need to know.
I think it's a term really that means you're trying to make someone else feel crazy. So it's different than lying. It's usually someone who's not very accountable, who like, oh, I did this, I cheated on you, but you're upset. I'm telling you I didn't, even though you're showing all this evidence, and like, you're crazy. No, you're the one who's being crazy. It's kind of like a term for.
Is it like projecting?
It's not projecting exactly.
I feel like
if it's truly gaslighting, then it's not projecting. So like if.
Did you just gaslight me into not understanding it? I feel gaslit right now because I'm confused and I feel crazy.
No, the best thing to do is when somebody says, you're gaslighting me, it's just like, you say, no, you're just being crazy again.
Does that work?
Because that's, gaslighting from what I understand, like the quintessential form of it is just immediately discrediting what they're saying because
I just feel like if you're a gaslighter, using gaslighting to gaslight somebody is like the easiest way to make them feel crazy, or like the easiest way to gaslight somebody is to say that they're gaslighting you.
Right. I think it gets thrown around and overly used.
You're gaslighting me. It's like, am I? Like, am I crazy? Like, no, yeah, you're gaslighting me. I did that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's kind of ironic to use it that way.
I think that's where I get confused. I'm like, who? Because it's like whoever said it first wins. Like, no, I said it first. So. Yeah,
that's why you got to be smart and get in there first.
Yeah. Okay. So just say it first.
Projecting's a good word.
You heard
good one. Projecting is kind of saying you're projecting. Is another good way of
projecting?
Winning a fake argument.
Oh, winning a fake argument. That's really this is what I need to know, is how to win fake arguments,
yeah,
especially online.
If you want to have a super healthy relationship with someone, just constantly accuse them of projecting and gaslighting.
And then you're good.
We're trying to figure out as many intellectually dishonest debate techniques as possible for future interviews. We're actually going to practice on you, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Right on. No, and you heard it here from the licensed therapist, so it's valid.
Yep. Now, okay, so gaslighting is just like making somebody feel crazy. But like, what if they are crazy? What if you make somebody feel crazy who is crazy?
But it's only if it's not true or whatever. So if someone is saying like
I'm sneaking my mistress out the door and you see me, and like, you're crazy. That's not what you think it is. And it's well, I just saw it.
Like it's
no,
like
you're
lying and trying
crazy.
To make them think they're wrong, even though they're right, actually.
Because I think, yeah, a common misconception with gaslighting is if you, and I could be wrong, this could be just me gaslighting, but if you're breaking down somebody's argument in the most intellectual and honest way possible, and it makes them feel crazy, that doesn't make it gaslighting
No.
if there's merit and rationale and reason behind it. So I think a lot of people are like, you're gaslighting me in those instances because it's an easy way to discredit the other person. It's gaslighting.
That's what I hate.
But
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's like why
yeah.
it's such a fine line, right? Because like I've argued with somebody and I've been using logic and I've been using, am I super loud?
No, I'm going to turn mine all the way up. So
And like you logic your way into like, if you use logic and they don't like it, they just go, you're gaslighting me. You've poked holes in my argument. I don't like it. I don't like how you're making me feel inferior. And it's like, well, you are kind of wrong. And that's why, like, just because you're wrong doesn't mean I gaslight you. Because I feel like that people just love to, you're gaslighting me. And
It's
like,
a term people love to throw around, and it's like fun to say. And
it is.
they think, oh, that way I'm never wrong.
Yeah. Well, he gaslit me into thinking that cheating on him was bad. But like, I was right in sleeping with his best friend because.
And it's truly unfortunate because these terms all have actual meaning, right? And the reason why they've come to the forefront is because we've made advances in, behavioral psychology and therapy so that we can understand better how people initiate these arguments that are dishonest, right? But then it's like weaponized so that people don't have to be accountable. You know what I mean? It's really interesting.
I like it.
It's pretty neat.
I like it, dude. Yeah. I like getting all of my therapy advice from people on Instagram. I think about going to an actual therapist. Like, they're not as funny or as good looking. That matters to me for some reason. I actually want an ugly therapist because I've always gone for you have to pick. You can see their pictures now, and I just picked the hot one, and I'm like, well, I could manipulate her, and that's not a healthy way. I need like an ugly old dude to like tell me I'm wrong.
Yes.
That'd work much better.
Yeah. I wonder how many problems arise in those situations, right? Where there is like an attractive therapist or something, and there are people like you that are there just like, so then I just like, we just had sex for 4 hours and it was just like, you know what I mean? Like,
I think of that scene in Step Brothers, like you've seen that movie.
Oh, of course.
When he's like just constantly hitting on his therapist.
Like, you're my girlfriend.
She's like,
At
no.
the end, she's like, fine.
It's like gives it. It's really funny. I watched that yesterday, so it's fresh in my head. I forgot. I had a good point, but it's okay.
what's your favorite intellectually dishonest debate technique?
Like,
I like ad hominem because I can just like make up a whole story about somebody. Like your background is like, you're neo-fascist or something like that. And it's like, regardless of whether or not that's true, that's another thing people will do.
oh, you
is
just make their
a caricature of them.
Yeah.
And then that's them. And then that defines their entire argument is who they are in your head and how you define them and describe them to other people.
Well, as soon as you said intellectual, I was like, ooh, that's hard for me. I don't get into intellectual debates. I like just like yelling, being louder than them. Just yelling. Is that intellectual? Like if I'm just louder, if I just say my point louder, it's fine.
It does work sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I just like to cry.
Yeah, crying.
Just crying. Well, now I'm sad, so you've lost.
Yeah. You made me cry and you gaslit me into crying. Here's my problem with therapy.
Okay.
How do I know my therapist is actually trying to help me or just wants me to keep coming back so they can keep making money? Because like, it's really, if you just keep agreeing with me, because I feel like back in the day, you used to have like the Miss Cleos, right? And you would call these people and they would just tell you what you want to hear.
She's a psychic, though. You recognize the difference, right?
I'm struggling. We've had like credentialed people on this podcast, and then we've also had psychics. So
I'm both. So.
Okay, sweet.
So
Yeah. So it's trying to. I'm like, which one is? Hold on, because they masquerade sometimes. Mostly, I think the psychics masquerade as like credentialed therapists. But I wonder about that because it's like, is this like, because the goal of therapy is to get better and to go less, right? I mean, or is it just something that we should just be accustomed to? Like, hey, you just go to therapy as needed, but
I think, well,
I mean, I guess it should probably stay regular, right? Like, it's easy to go to your therapist when you're going through a breakup or you lost your job or you're depressed, but it's, when things are going well, you're probably less likely to feel like you need help.
I don't think you No, well, first of all, I don't think most therapists think that way of like, oh, I'm making so much money by this person coming to see me. And sometimes, different clients need different things and different people need different things. Like, it's totally okay to go to therapy for like 6 months because you're just dealing with an issue and you start to feel better. But there is a lot of value. It depends what you're working on too, in staying in therapy for like, I would say like a year is a pretty good amount of time. But you should also talk to your therapist about that. Like, hey, what do you see like an ending date, or how do we know? And that's a question that your therapist should ask you. Like, how do you know when you're better? How do you know when things are feeling better?
Yeah, because I want to graduate therapy.
Yeah. And they'll have a treatment plan and a date of time, hopefully, that they're kind of looking into. And, that should be something you discuss regularly with your therapist. And they should be discussing it with you on some level. But at the same time, I think, like, my view, and it's a little different. I don't work with a ton of adults, but I like to check in with my kiddos and teenagers sometimes and ask them, like, how are you feeling? What's going on? But like, I've seen one kid for 9 years, but he has, he's on the autism spectrum. He has things that are not going to just kind of like go away or, get better from necessarily. So everyone's different. But
how do kids end up going to see you? Like, where do your clients, how do you get clients, or where are they coming from?
Well, I have 2 different jobs. My individual clients come to me. I mostly work with teenagers and kids who have been in the foster care system, who have, family trauma, things going on like that. So a lot of co-parenting, divorce issues, those types of things. Sometimes kids they usually show up because they're having behavioral problems.
Like through like a school system or something of that nature?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or sometimes through the county if they're on any sort of like child protective services case, things like that. So those are most of the kids I work with. I also have been working with a ton of kids. We were just talking about ADHD and autism spectrum. So they get referrals for their school most of the time.
How are you helping the kids with ADHD? I know as a kid, I had it bad. It pretty much went undiagnosed forever. I know at one point they wanted to put me on, like, Ritalin was the one back then, and thank God my mother had foresight to not do that. I think maybe it's good for kids. I don't know if it would have been good for me. I don't think I would have taken it. I would have been very bad at it. That's the worst thing about having ADHD is, like, even if I had medication, I would forget to take it. I'd be too sidetracked. It's difficult. I just wonder, what are like the behavioral therapies for young kids?
It depends, but for a lot of it, it's like just simple time management and also like normalizing that probably more people have ADHD than we think. And the school system, unfortunately, is not set up for kids with any sort of like learning disabilities or differences. It's really set up for one type of kid. And if the kids don't fit that mold, they often get in trouble a lot more. So I do a lot of like working on their self-esteem. Like, you're not a bad kid just because you can't sit still in class. And, this is more normal than people think. And you just learn a little differently or do things differently. Because a lot of kids with ADHD might get like really bad grades, but are super crazy smart and have like talents in other things than being able to sit down and take a math test. So
Yeah, it's hard.
yeah.
And, I think that's the beauty of therapy is that there's a lot of nuance, right? Whereas a school system's very standardized and doesn't cater to the different neurodivergencies that are prevalent in all of society among everybody. Literally every single person is a little bit different. And so it's hard, but, how do you not standardize it? So I guess my question for you is, are the nuances ever difficult, or do you enjoy every person being a little bit different and being able to cater your therapy style to each individual?
No, I like every client being different. It's both, and I set up my caseload like that as much as I can because I enjoy different challenges on my side, but also on their side. I don't necessarily have one specific way of doing therapy. Like, I can change it up for what my client needs. So, I have a 10-year-old, we play basketball almost every week because he loves that. And then I have a 15-year-old, we do a lot of art therapy and talking, and it's more quiet and like soothing type of activities. So really, I like the diversity. I like the different challenges. And even like, I have 3 kiddos on the autism spectrum right now, but they're all present completely differently and have different needs and different difficulties and different talents. So I find that interesting as a therapist.
Yeah, I have a special place in my heart for the autism spectrum. I won't go into it on camera, but yeah, there are different varied levels there. So that's really cool that you're able to navigate that, because I think society as a whole isn't. Do you wonder, I guess I wonder, does your ADHD kind of help you in that aspect to be able to be like, it's not standardized and it's fun being able to like figure each individual person out and do it a little bit differently in every spot?
Oh yeah, if I had to sit down in an office and do the same thing and talk to the same type of client over and over again, I would lose my mind.
How much do you love that, Adam? Doing the same, like sitting in front of an office, doing the same thing every day.
I can balance the two. It's the focus, I think. It's like I know my position there and I know my role there, and then I come here and I know my role here. Although this is my passion. This is my love, is like talking and theorizing and doing stuff like this and trying to promote things that are healthy for society and humans in general.
You enjoy processes though. Like,
love
here's
processes.
the end, and I know if I do these steps, I get here.
Love processes. I never haphazardly do anything. Like this whole, like everything has been a process. And I know that it takes a lot of steps to get to that last end goal, right? But there are benchmarks along the way that you hit. There's dopamine hits along the way, right? Like you may not hit that ultimate goal of being, a big famous podcaster or whatever. And that's not necessarily our goal, but just as an example, and get that big dopamine hit like you want. But you can get to a point, I thought I saw a flicker, but you can get to a point where, you are enjoying the process as it happens, right? Oh, I got the desk. We set the desk up, dopamine. We got the microphone, set the microphone up. We put the headphones on. This sounds cool, dopamine. There's applause on that thing. There's dopamine. And so it's just like the whole process, like these lights are neat, like dopamine, like got these the other day, put them on, dopamine. And so I think there's a benefit if you can like try to relay that to people with ADHD. And I understand it's hard because they're just neurodivergent and the brains are just a little bit different. But if you can like explain some way, maybe that processes can be fun too. If you just trust them.
That's really just the difference between instant gratification and more delayed, right? I operate from a place of instant gratification, but the older I get, the more I'm appreciating like, oh, hey, like I planned this thing out and in advance, and then I did it, and the goal was reached efficiently. Like you've obviously been in school forever. You went to school. I struggled with that because it was hard for me to see the value in like this homework assignment now, and like 'cause I don't get any dopamine. I guess when you get the grade back, you're like, oh, okay, this is fun, but it wasn't too instantaneous. It was very little hits of dopamine along the way.
They're not big.
Yeah, but that's probably better long term for your brain. Like my brain is out of whack pretty bad, I think, because of. I mean, isn't that what ADHD is? Is like a dopamine. Mm-hmm. Isn't that it's a problem regulating dopamine?
I think some of it, yeah.
They theorize. Yeah.
It's definitely true. Some of it too just doesn't make sense. Like I feel like with autism and probably ADHD to some degree, sometimes it's like, well, why do we have to do these things? Like my client, I've had, kids don't want to clean their room. They're like, well, I don't see any value in it. And so as with people with ADHD, I think finding that value in it is a huge part of it. Because if I have a lot of value, I'll make it happen. Absolutely. But if I don't see value in it, I'm going to put it off. I'm going to do it as slowly as possible or do something else. Like
that was me in school, right? Like if I went to a class that I saw value in, that I liked, I was there every day. I did all the homework. I love being there. But then when I'm in, some random like literature class reading books I don't care about, I'm like I'm not going to go to that. Like I failed the typing classes, the classes that everybody had to go to learn how to use a computer. So finding value in when I would find value in things, I would go. I love those classes. Also, who decides what's value? that kind of becomes internalized.
I think that's the big problem with the education and kind of how we view things in general, is that we've decided there's one way to do things, and then kids who don't fit that, which I think is far more than even the ones that
when you
did
said
well.
Like this one type of person, I'm like, how many? There's, as far as we know, lots of types of people.
Right, exactly. Like, and I don't have any like research on the percentages of what that would be or anything, but I really think it's meant for kids who like, honestly, I did really well in school because I'm a people pleaser. Like, because I really needed that.
I'm a people pleaser and I hated school and did terrible.
But I needed that constant validation. And, you know, I think that was just a way I got validation because I just started doing well in school and was like, oh, people told me how smart I was, you know, and like that was a big part of my identity was like keeping up with that.
I got validation by like farting in class, and then people would laugh. My peers would laugh. Being a class clown, I think I liked a lot of that.
Yeah.
Which is why my life's the way it is. Because I didn't value good grades meant nothing to me. I didn't care if my teachers were like, "Oh, you're smart and good job." I'm like, yeah, but I care what because I'm a people pleaser, but I wanted to please my classmates. I think that was.
I wonder how much, because we derive so much of our dopamine from validation in general. So I wonder if you can just like, you know, put somebody on the course of like, this is the positive validation. Like when you get validation, I don't know if it's possible to even push someone in that direction or if they're just going to go in any direction that they choose.
Well, it's
but,
all-
you know, if you get validation from like, oh my God, this dude can smoke a whole, you know, red 100 in one drag. Like he's that guy, you know what I mean? Then you just have to keep like pushing the boundaries in like this very toxic area of your life. Whereas it's like, I'm getting all this praise for, you know, being smart and getting good grades. And like, that's obviously going to put you on another path.
Well,
So I wonder if you can just like alter the path where you're just like showering somebody, love bombing somebody in this like way of, you know, positive reinforcement that can get them maybe off.
we were
the
talking
track.
about that earlier. Like, it's pretty unanimous against most therapists that positive reinforcement works much better than any sort of negative, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But is there a place for negative reinforcement? Are there people that do react to that, or is it like they're reacting but out of a place of like survival? Or
You know, I mean, I don't know. Maybe when someone's a little bit more able to like think things through and kind of understand things, like a, you know, maybe more like a teenager might. I don't know. I personally don't really utilize it.
well, like we watched that movie Whiplash, right? And that guy was all
Right.
negative reinforcement, but
I know. I was thinking
did
about
make
like the
some great
army and stuff, like how some people who maybe just need to be told what to do more and like kind of need that. Maybe some people like it, but
Rigid
I don't know.
structure, like, and that's the thing is, you know, learning styles are going to be a little bit different for everybody. I wonder if those styles work for people, but they're doing underlying damage, you know?
yeah, no, I don't think I would never use that or tell anyone to use negative reinforcement. I think even if someone, like you're saying, someone might look like they're excelling with it, but there's probably not. And who knows, even
or it's like, yeah, they're getting good at it, but like it's gonna make a really toxic situation later. Because
right.
I know my self-talk isn't very positive all the time. Like the way that I sometimes motivate myself is like, you loser, you know, you fucking piece of shit. Like, get up. Look at you just laying in bed. Just can't do anything. This is why everything's terrible, because you just lay here. Like, it doesn't really get me out of bed too often, but I have that. And sometimes it does. I'm just like, yeah, you know, like I hear David Goggins in my head or something. Get up, you know, but when I'm like, dude, you're doing good. Just get up and go do good. Keep doing good. It's okay that you slept in. You don't have to, you're allowed to sleep in. You can still go do the thing. Because as somebody who manages their time so poorly, and I don't like to set like deadlines, because as soon as I miss a deadline, nothing else happens. And like when I have a diet, right? I'm the kind of person that like I'm really, really strict with my diet, and then I mess up one time, and then I just binge.
So that's where the process goes awry for like the ADHD. Maybe that's the issue with the process, right? Because for me, the process is fine, right? I skipped a day. I'll just be like, oh, okay, like now, like working out or something like that. I wanted to get 3 days in, whatever it may be, or the process for the podcast. Like, oh, I didn't do this thing in the time that I wanted to, which is why you were like, oh, we don't need to release it on Labor Day if we can't. And I was like, no, we have to, because sticking to the process makes it easier to then follow the full, you know, vision. And so, you know, but then even if I didn't, right, then I do it the next day. But once you start to become dishonest with yourself, because I said we're going to release these clips Tuesdays and Fridays. And I'm sure at some point, you know, I'll skip a Tuesday or Friday. I'll just get burnt out a little bit, right? But I want to do it as frequently as possible and stick to the schedule as much as you can. Because by sticking to that process, you put yourself in the best position possible to succeed in any area of life, whether it's school or like a workout regimen or diet or anything. Like the process is so important. And getting off, you shouldn't, you know, beat yourself up about it.
I think people with ADHD often suffer from like perfectionism too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And well, I didn't do it perfect, so just, you know, I'm not even going to try now. I already messed it up. Like
like
it's
an
already tarnished.
obsessive compulsive thing almost.
It's I mean, I got all kinds of things going on in my weird little brain, but I'm learning.
How many disorders does he have, Lindsey?
We've been trying to get to the bottom of it.
I don't think we have time today.
We only have about 2 hours.
It's the weirdest thing with like some of the mental health stuff is like you start to like figure one out, and then you realize like I didn't really realize what OCD was, and then I had it until like a year and a half, 2 years ago. Like I always thought of OCD as like people that like meticulously cleaned and organized. I'm like, oh no, it's just like having the same thought over and over again, or like doing some weird behavior because you think if you don't, you'll die. I have that to an extent, right? It's like I'm washing my hands because I've associated washing my hands with being a good person, and if I don't wash my hands, I'm a bad person. Now bad karma follows.
Do you think having a label for things helps you, or does it make you like how does like having that label of like, oh, I have ADHD,
so
or
sometimes
I have OCD?
Sometimes it helps, but it can also like, it's like people with astrology, right? Like, well, I'm an Aries, so we're known for, being flaky. And it's like, well, that doesn't, like, oh, I have ADHD, so sorry, couldn't pay attention to you. And it's like, it helps to know, but hey, you still have to like take actions, and there's still accountability involved. So I think it really, when I want to be accountable, it helps. But then when I want to play the victim, I can also lean into it that way too. So I think it depends on the circumstance and the individual.
I think it's just really interesting to me. I've been seeing this trend of like younger kids, like 12 and up, kind of really want to have something. They want to have a label. They want to say, it's like, it makes them cool. Like I had it was kind of hilarious. But one kid came up and he said, I've recently become mentally ill. And I was like, what? And like, it's so funny because he's like, yeah, I have anxiety. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's so funny because I've had anxiety my whole life, but I had never once described myself as being mentally ill.
Right.
Because in my own head, I'm kind of like, well, I don't feel like I'm, or, like mental illness is real. And also it's just so strange to me how some of these kids are really like looking for a diagnosis. It like makes them cool and unique and different, I think, or something.
It makes you different, but it also gives you a place to fit in, right? Like,
true.
I look at all the stuff that kids are doing and these ideologies and groups and whatever that they're clinging to, the pronouns, all of that. And we did that as kids. We just didn't have as many groups to go into, right? It was like you could be gothic, you could maybe be a juggalo, which half the people probably don't even know what that is, but that was like an option. You could kind of be like a dork, and that was like your Magic the Gathering kind of kids, Like there wasn't only so many groups because we didn't have these internet. We weren't all intermingling. And now it's like you have those groups, and then within those groups there's subgroups, and within that subgroup there's subgroups. And I think people they want to fit in because you want validation, but you also want to be unique. Like I look at fashion now and it's like, is that fashion or is it just who can look the most ridiculous? Because it doesn't seem like it's that like fashionable. Like there's
that
no
just
cohesion.
means you're old.
Is that
That's
what that
means?
It is.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
When people's fashion makes you mad, it's your fault.
It doesn't make me mad. I just don't understand it.
Well,
Because you're old. Yeah, because we're old.
I just remember when I remember like watching kids wear Jinko jeans. Ironically, now it's hilarious because I wore those because I thought they were cool.
Yeah.
Like there was no irony involved. Like I really thought they were cool.
And
Do you remember when Dad thought we could share Jinkos?
Yeah, he's like, why can't you wear her jeans? And I'm like, because those are women's jeans. He's like, they're both ridiculous. Like, because they were both ridiculous. He's like, it's this ridiculous or this ridiculous. Like, what difference does it make? They both have pockets that can fit 2 liters. What do you care? Yeah. And it's like, well, hers has a little like female on it, and they're for women.
We were horrified. We were like, what?
Yeah, like how out of touch is our father? He was out of touch.
Now we're yelling about Jinkos.
Jinkos was a good fad. I literally had ones that you could put a 2-liter in.
You know the fad I don't understand, and like this is me being old, I get it, but the bowl cut's back, right? In like the new like Mexican standard.
The Edgar.
The Edgar haircut.
So bad.
So bad.
They're bad, but like I was at Chick-fil-A the other day and this kid had a fresh one with like a design in it, and I was like, I get it. I complimented him. I was like, dude, the hair looks fresh, bro. And he was like, he loved it. Cause
I'm going to get flamed by all the Mexicans in the comments.
Yeah, dude.
I'm Mexican, so Leave me alone.
Get an Edgar.
Yeah. You just see me. I'm just like Toadstool next time.
Toadstool. It does look like Toad.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a great look.
Yeah, easy Halloween costume, right? Just toss on like a.
It's funny
polka
how
dot
things,
shirt.
because one cool person did that, and then a few followed, and then it just caught fire.
That's what's so weird about fashion. It was like I remember I saw one kid and I was just like, oh man, he's got a bowl cut. That's strange. And then like the next week I was like, that whole group of Hispanic kids have bowl cuts. That's especially strange. And then before I knew it, that's all I saw.
Do you remember
anywhere.
being young though? You dressed like your friends.
Yeah, so
like I go to the gym and
like, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Like especially young kids. Like I see like the 20 somethings, the Gen Zers at the gym, and I'm like, they're the exact same. And I'm like, glad I never did that, but I did.
Well, in adolescence, you just have to do emulation, right? Because you don't know anything else, right? You don't have any wisdom, right?
Yeah,
you don't have a modicum of wisdom.
What
you're
is
just
the
like,
coolest kid doing?
what am I supposed to be doing here? Like you're just feeling your way through life, right? So,
And at that time, your peers are the most important things in the whole world.
The
You,
FOMO I used to experience as like a 15-year-old kid when I was either grounded or had to do something on the weekends and I couldn't go out with my friends. Like if I wasn't part of whatever happened that weekend, it was like I didn't exist anymore. I was death. I was like, are they even going to accept me back to their friend group on Monday?
it's existential.
It really is.
Yeah.
And like now, like the greatest thing that can happen is somebody tell me I don't have to go to the like group function. Like I'm like getting ready for the group thing and it cancels. I'm like, yes.
Yeah,
Or,
canceled
like,
plans are the best
or like I
thing
get like
ever.
I have like legit excuse. Or just like now you're old and sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to go and I'm not going. Like it's like a boundary I can put up. Like
You told me you had the headache the other day.
yeah, I probably just didn't want to do something.
I knew you didn't want to, and I was just like, yeah, I don't really want to either. So I was like, right on. That's my excuse out.
you know?
Yeah.
I did have a little headache.
Yeah.
Well, I woke up and I ate cinnamon rolls for breakfast.
Literally anytime you say you have a headache, it's like, okay, he doesn't want to do it. And he's got a little bit of a like twinge in his head.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah, because it's too hard to just like. Dude, I'm not an assertive person, so it's hard for me to just be like, you know what? I don't want to do that because I don't want to do it. It's hard to be that, but it's like I have a headache. I should learn to be assertive. Because you ever meet assertive people? And I just like Jeremy. Jeremy would just be like, I don't feel like going, and he just would tell you that, and he just wouldn't go.
I'm fascinated by. I like always find myself like weirdly attracted to assertive people, like people who are just a little bit mean. I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Like, will you come to the restaurant with me?
Yeah. How many times have you eaten a meal that you really were unsatisfied with? Like you didn't want cheese on the hamburger and then cheese came and you ate it and the whole time you're like, tastes like cheese. Didn't want to taste cheese today, but I'm going to because sending it back means I'm a jerk. And then if this waitress doesn't like me, she's going to go home and tell her husband. And then I don't know what I'm going to do. Like that's my biggest fear. That's why I overtip. I could have the worst meal
I do
ever. You're
too.
still getting 20% because
I never tip less than 20, even if it's like the worst.
And
like I could watch you hawk a loogie in it. I'm like, dang it.
you only get 25%. But that's the issue is like, because I'm the same way, right? And then now we have this tipping culture where everybody is bent out of shape because let's be realistic. These companies should probably be paying living wages, like Starbucks and all these places like are making record profits unseen ever before in human history. And that's propagated by people going, but it's, they do the thing and then they turn the thing around and it's like, oh man, but like we didn't have to use to tip if it wasn't, service at, sitting down at a restaurant, but I always tip then anyway too, because, money isn't that important to me.
Well, I think it's funny when people are like all up in arms about the UPS like wages that came out that are like kind of a skewed number anyways. And there's a lot of like context that's not associated with that $175,000 a year. People are like mad about it. And I'm like, do you know why like they're able to like why UPS is making so much money where they can pay their people like a reasonable wage is because you keep buying stuff online.
Yeah.
If you don't want them to make that kind of money, get rid of the demand, start going to the store to get your underwear. Like, I don't want to do that. Go to the store to buy your stuff. Like, no, I want to click buttons. And as long as you're clicking buttons, like somebody has to deliver this stuff.
We'll get back to psychology because we're getting really like mishmash at hodgepodge, but and we tend to do this. But
Yeah.
really
I don't know how
quickly-
we got to UPS from that, but
Well, it's bullshit.
but there's psychology because there's psychology involved in like the way people think, right? Because
Everything's psychology. Yeah.
it really is.
Yeah,
People are angry, but they don't want to look at like how did we get to where we got?
Yeah.
Like I'm just angry that we're here, and it's like, well, like, I help perpetuate it. Like I hate social media.
That's
I'm
always
on social
my first
media
question
all
is,
the
what
time.
are you doing? What are you doing to change it? Then stop fucking complaining if you're not doing anything. You know what I mean?
But I want people to change it for me.
Yeah.
I want to complain to you, and then you make my mental health better.
So how do we fix the divisions of society? Like
Stop watching the news.
A to Z. Okay.
No, I
So
don't
just
know.
watch only our podcast. Get
Okay.
all of your information. From
Keeping
me,
tabs
from
with the
Kyle and
Idealist
Adam.
and
Yes.
the
Spend
Cynic.
time with people who are different than you.
Okay.
Travel.
Nice. I don't travel. Shit. Okay.
Let me think.
Well,
Volunteer.
Will virtual reality traveling, if I put on like a VR and go sit at the beach and drink a cocktail, does that constitute as traveling, or does
Yeah.
I like actually?
Does that constitute as breaking your sobriety?
Ooh.
Well, if it's a virtual cocktail, it's fine.
Okay. Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure.
It's like, how do you act in the virtual? I'm sorry.
I don't even remember what it's like to be drunk.
I kind of don't either. It's been.
I remember what it's like to be
years.
hungover, and that's enough to keep me to not drink again.
What's it like being able? Have you interacted with somebody that had a problem with alcohol in your time doing therapy?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, that's weird
Oh,
because
I
alcohol is
didn't-
usually not like a big implicator in mental illness.
Yeah, it seems like it's legal, so
Yeah.
it's not problematic at all.
No.
It's literally, so my other job, I didn't go into this one yet, but I work also at a drug and alcohol treatment center. So,
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Right on. How is that? Is it a little scary sometimes?
well, I work with the children of people who are working on their recovery. So, I mean, I definitely have some people who are really angry to be there and are court ordered and stuff like that. But so I do family therapy with folks who are in recovery to try and help them like mend their relationships with their kids. And so it's pretty fascinating. But
Does working with so many different people that have these, I don't want to say mental illnesses, but neurodivergencies ever weigh on you? Or do you find it so rewarding that it does the exact opposite and make you feel better about yourself and your place in the world?
it's definitely a combo. So what people probably don't know a lot about your master's degree when you're going to get your degree in counseling is that probably like 50% of it is doing a shit ton of self-reflection and understanding your biases, understanding your triggers, like things that are hard for you, and learning how to take care of yourself. So
Because it's what you're seeing is so heavy on the soul all the
it's
time.
so heavy sometimes. And like I get a lot. I see a lot of change. I see a lot of positivity. I see a lot of recovery. I see a lot of, really amazing people having these amazing transformations. I have a lot of hope in what I do, but there's definitely been some really hard, like intense child abuse that I've heard and seen and felt. Like I've definitely had clients or, interacted with families and then like cried for a while after. And as a therapist, you really have to work on separating yourself a little bit from that, but also like not taking it home, not carrying it. Like they call it
How do
compassion
you
fatigue.
not? I mean, that's got to be so difficult.
You see your own therapist. We also do what's called debriefing, so and supervision and consultation. So I see probably every week on one way or another, I'm talking to other therapists about things that are going on so that I can kind of unload that. I do my own therapy. I'm not in therapy right now, but I did for a while. And then like having routines, like sometimes like, so everyone makes fun of me because I come home from work and then I watch reality TV, like shit, terrible TV.
What's the best one?
Right now I'm obsessed with The Ultimatum. It is so freaking good.
Ultimatum. What is that?
Oh my God, you have to watch it.
Okay.
I could talk about that all day. If you want to see some human psychology, like watch The Ultimatum. It's about couples who one gives the other an ultimatum of like, marry me or break up with me. And they do this dumb thing where they go, it's a reality TV show. So they all break up and then they couple with another person on the show. And then they have a trial marriage for 3 weeks where they go live with somebody else and like kind of see what it's like to be with someone else to see if they want to stay with their partner or they want to break up.
So there's an irony that I'm seeing here is like, it's almost like, now hear me out. It's almost like the therapist is using this like sort of mindless entertainment to detach themselves from the harsh reality of the world. And the irony, the additional irony is that it's called reality TV when it's anything
Yeah.
but, right?
It's insane.
I guarantee you, like every therapist I know loves to like come home and like decompress. Like it's because like they'll be like really great shows like The Wire and stuff. And I love that stuff. But sometimes I'm like, it's too heavy. It's too much when like, if I've had a rough day or heard some tough stories, I'm like, I can't watch more sad things. Like I have to watch dumb things.
And then inversely, I'm sitting here and I'm always talking about these deep, huge issues that just are so profound and fundamental to like the human core.
In your off time.
Right. And then I go to my office and I'm just like this, like, accounting drone. Right. And so but it's maybe, I wonder if that gives me more capacity to be able to do that in my free time, where it's just like, oh, this is a fun hobby. And it's not like this overwhelming, like, jeez.
Well, it's like how many people that cook for a living that are like really good chefs do you see like eating McDonald's on their way home?
Right.
They're just like, I don't want to, I just did that.
Shout out Graham. He doesn't like
all the time.
cook
He's like
anymore.
eating Panda Express. And I'm like, aren't you like like you could cook at any restaurant anywhere? Yeah. Where are you cooking that?
You're an amazing chef. Yeah.
Yeah.
Over it.
No, it's like
Sucks.
as a therapist, you have to take care of yourself because otherwise you don't have capacity for your friends and family or like, your partner. Like I have to stop and be like, I have to have boundaries and really work on myself.
Is that why all the nurses I've dated are crazy? Because they see crazy shit all day. And then they just like want to go let loose and do a bunch of blow.
Well, it's amazing how little self-care and mental health is talked about in other professions. I had a professor who would do debriefs with like police stations or firehouses when they had like a big tragedy kind of happen. And it's just like how this could be a whole nother topic. But I think a lot of the issues we're having with policemen right now is because they're not practicing any sort of self-care and they become so desensitized and see all this trauma and all this shit all the time. And then to continue to do your job well, you're carrying all of that is not good.
So it's almost like the police maybe need more funding for mental health and adequate training to do the job that they have to do that is so difficult because of all the terrible things you have to see. And then maybe if you pay them a little better, you'll attract people who are a little bit more like sounded in their minds and a little more grounded. That's a crazy idea, though. Just defund them.
You're not
give them no money.
The bottom of the barrel.
Just keep letting them loot
I had a
stores and then
friend-
just close the stores and a bunch of people lose their jobs and it's fine. We don't need police.
No.
Sorry.
I had a friend who worked at the police station, was a therapist as well. And she said there's two types of people who go into law enforcement. It's people who care and want to make a change and people who like to control others.
Nice.
What a crazy dynamic, right? Because
You have altruism and like
Yeah.
the opposite of that.
I'm
like just
sure that's true.
power.
no wonder why there's
hungry.
gangs that internal affairs and all these problems.
But that's why the defund the police movement never quite made sense to
makes
me.
zero
Like
sense.
I understand the sentiment emotionally, like the reactionary thing. But when you break it down, if you fund the police more, then you can weed out those power hungry people that are just in it for that, right? And then you can
I
encourage
wonder
the
what the-
altruistic people because you're offering better pay.
I
right?
wonder what the
And
ratio is though, because I feel like it's probably skewed
Oh, it's
towards people that
definitely
want to
skewed.
control much more than people who want to change.
Politicians too. You think about it, and you're just
Absolutely.
like anybody who would seek to be a representative of Congress or senator or president is probably the last person that should ever be in that
Yeah,
position.
and then you get, if you're a nice person who has these like really good values and things that you want to change, you're just getting thrown into like a lion's den with all these people that are cutthroat and probably sociopathic and
Oh, absolutely.
and like
You have to
now you have
be.
to go navigate against all of them. Like you're just going to get shot down. That's why anytime you see anybody actually trying to incite change from within any sort of political structure or government, bureaucratic, whatever, they get shot down because look who they're dealing with. Like you're a threat to like their way of life. It's like it's such a catch-22.
It is. And that's a tough problem to solve because these, who's watching the watchers, right? Who changes like that system? Because, you can have altruistic people altruistic people generally don't want to go into it. They may idealize it because it makes sense. Like, okay, well, if a lot of us banded together and we got into Congress, then we can enact actual positive change. But then you get into it and then you find out it's just this like cutthroat, like bloodthirsty
if you
endeavor.
if you start getting a bunch of like people who are all kind of bored, you end up with like wolves in sheep's clothing, right? You have people masquerading around as these altruistic,
The grifters.
yeah, and then all of a sudden they rise to power, and then it's just a shit show all over again.
Yeah, and somehow, and I don't know if I just have an uncanny knack of spotting, disingenuous people or what, but I don't know how people fall for it. So many people fall for
Well,
these people
well,
that to me are just like, this
think
person's
about-
very clearly just, they
But you
want
have-
your support so that they can get power.
When you
And
look at people, you tend to be cynical or neutral, right? You tend to start off neutral, and as soon as they skew one way, like you try to be neutral, but like sometimes you maybe even start off as cynical.
Yep.
And a lot of people like me, I see the best in people. So when people come up to me asking for money on the streets, I'm like, oh, you need money? You know, and it's like this, like maybe they do. I fall for grifters, not because I just don't I don't want to look at the world from a cynical perspective. I just tend to give people the benefit of the doubt and then hope that everybody else is like a loving, caring person. But the problem is when you're a sap, you get walked all over.
That's such a good point. You know what's interesting though is I think that cynicism could actually play into that as well. If you're cynical towards like one particular tribe, we're very tribalistic creatures. If you're cynical towards that tribe, then maybe you're going to irrationally gravitate towards this other one, even if it's not in your best interest or something like that. So you're coming at it from a point of cynicism, and you're joining this tribe because that tribe is you're so wary of, right? Like neutrality to me is probably, in my opinion, the best perspective to approach anything from. And then from that neutrality, based on whatever is presented, you then choose to see it cynically or ideally.
Which I try to be neutral as often as possible, but you know, if you're standing in the middle of the road, you get hit by both sides sometimes. And then you have to be careful there too. Like sometimes you have to pick a side. Like it's necessary to like fight evil. Sometimes you have to pick the good side, but you know, that's a whole nother philosophical debate, whether what's good and what's.
But that's what I do, right? Like sometimes it seems like I'm erring on the side of cynicism, but I really do believe it's true neutrality. And then once I see this like innate evil or wrongdoing in society or, you know, people or something like that, then I'm like, okay, like this person, until they prove otherwise, is now like a bad person in my eyes, or like evil, because I feel like this is fundamentally who they are, or like the structures in which they're operating in, or the group that they're in, or something like that, right? And until, you know, there's some kind of change enacted, then why wouldn't I believe that? I started from a point of neutrality. They proved that they're like good people, and I like them now.
So
and
through your anecdotal experience as a human being, which category do you find people to be in more? A evil category or a good? Do you think more people are bad than good?
No.
No, you think more people are good?
Yes. I think the bad people are just louder. So it's like if you're driving on the street, you're like, God, everyone's driving like assholes today. But really, it's like 1% of people. They're just really in your face. You don't notice the person that's in between the lanes and like using their turn signal, and like they're just doing what they're supposed to do. It's everybody else, like those very small proportion of people that are doing all this. And then they tend to kind of like exacerbate the problem, right? Because then, you know, they're loud and obnoxious, and then it gets you all riled up. And then, you know, trauma's a virus, right? Because then you get irritated. You just had their traumas inflicted on you, and then you inflict it on someone else, and you honk or something like that. Or you take it out on your kids when you get home or whatever. Just rabbit holes. I am very hodgepodge sometimes. Apologies.
No, but I think that there's a difference though between cynicism and having healthy boundaries. Like Kyle and I probably are both more of we probably get hurt a little more often because we're just like, everyone's good. But I think having some boundaries is also like a safe way to experience things.
The older I get, the more I tend to like have boundaries now, especially like with relationships. I just never used to have those. And now I'm like, no, I need like me. I always know like when I'm being anxiously attached to somebody and they like pull away from me, I'm like, it's like, and then I don't want to pull away from other people because I don't want to make them feel the way that I felt when a person pulled away from me. But like, that's more about me, right? Like it's okay to just go, no, I need a day. Or like, I can't, you know, like when you're dating somebody new, it's like, do you want to hang out tonight? And like, sometimes I would just agree to it, even though I don't actually want to. Like, I actually need to stay home and just rest and be alone. But I go do that, and all of a sudden I grow resentment towards them or something. It's hard to put up boundaries. And then like, because I'm a people pleaser and I don't want to make other people feel bad ever. Like, I would rather just, if I can take all the pain, I'll take it. And then I'll just put it on my shoulders. And if everybody else gets to walk a little lighter, then okay. That's always just been my perspective. And it's an okay one, but it really hurts me the most, right? Because
Totally.
I'm going to just put all these other people's problems on me.
And you have to be careful not to be a doormat. And I think a lot of people do. I'm not going to even be specific with this, but I see one person that I interact with regularly that tends to get really down on themselves, and you can tell they carry the burden of a lot of people, like those really feelers. And you just want to like tell them like it's okay, like you don't need to take everybody's burdens onto your own shoulders. But how do you do that? Have you ever experienced somebody that just feels so much that they're just perpetually depressed? I'm sure you've seen that a lot.
Absolutely. Well, I think I'm a lot like that. Like I could be if I let myself really feel the weight of the world. It's very easy to just be completely depressed and cynical. And I think it's really hard though sometimes to stand up for yourself. Like one of the things I honestly teach kids, because I think we should be learning this stuff at like 7 and 8 and not in our 30s. Like I had to go through things, but it's learning like what you can and cannot control, and like understanding that another person's feelings are not your responsibility. And people might dump on you, they might tell you all their problems, and really like think, is this something I can actually help them with? And if it's not, like really trying to let that go and be like, that's their stuff. And like learning that,
I never learned that.
Sounds so simple, but it's so difficult. I really didn't either, literally until I started like going to grad school and like having to do all this self-work, because it is like, you always feel like everything's your fault. You feel like you have to, take care of everyone. Like I was the type of person, like I'd be, at a bar or something, there'd be a girl crying in the bathroom, and I'd like be physically upset about it. Like, oh, I have to go help her, or I should go talk to her. Like I can't even, like, it upsets me physically to even see other people in pain like that.
And the reality is she's probably high on cocaine and cheated on her boyfriend. Her boyfriend called her out, and now she's crying about it.
Sorry,
that's my cynicism.
Like it's not my responsibility.
She got drunk and she fucked her like ex again, and her boyfriend found out, but he gaslit her into making her feel crazy. Now she's at the bar crying to some random girl in the bathroom who's just like willing to listen,
validating all her feelings.
No, honey, I'm just gonna ignore a couple of things you said there, but you'll pull through. Stop crying, please, so I can feel better.
No, there are definitely people like that who just don't know how to set boundaries for them, like emotional boundaries for themselves, and it's tough. It's really tough. That's why I'm very passionate about teaching kids some of that, like just differentiating themselves from other people and understanding like what you can and can't control.
And we talk about that a lot, actually. It's just like the old serenity prayer, right? Like control the things, or accept it. Grant me the serenity to control the things.
Accept the things I cannot change.
Thank
the
you.
courage to change things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
I'll never be able to say it that well. Right on.
I know. Well,
I've seen it on a refrigerator. It was on a refrigerator growing up.
Yeah.
Live, laugh, love.
Yeah.
God.
That's what healthy families look like. No, I'm just kidding. My family's great.
That's what NPC families do.
Live, laugh, love.
Like they're not real. NPC families. Have you ever interacted with an NPC in therapy that you know is not a real human being? They just are put into the simulation to just like satiate you.
Yeah, like it just there was like a filler episode.
Yeah,
Like, here you go.
filler Lindsey episode, like
Sure.
Truman Show. Yeah.
Of course.
And they just come in and they're just like, yeah, I was mowing the lawn the other day, and my wife said something, and I was like, oh, golly shucks. No, you're probably in the nitty gritty with like real people.
Yeah, pretty much. For the most part.
Okay. Here's something I've been struggling with lately is I hear a lot of people like really preach from like privileged perspectives about like the value in like meditation and stuff. And I absolutely in my life have seen the value from like meditation and mindfulness and gratefulness practices. But how do you relate that to somebody who has very, very little to be mindful and grateful for, right? Like some of the kids that you deal with probably just have been dealt the worst fucking hand imaginable, and like telling them to go in nature when they're upset or to meditate, that's just not going to mean anything to them, right? Like they may benefit from it to a degree, but it's probably diminishing returns based upon their circumstances.
No, it's it's really tough because I think a lot of people do not realize what it's like when you're severely traumatized and maybe still in survival mode. Like literally different parts of your brain are working. Like it's you're in fight or flight like all day, every day.
I mean, there's studies that show when you are under extreme stress, your IQ lowers because it has to. Because
weren't you guys talking about that before?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, and that's just like a slight financial burden. Like imagine actual
And I've read that physiologically, sorry to interrupt. I read that physiologically, when a child grows up with high cortisol levels, they kind of remain elevated all the time. And when they drop, it actually feels uncomfortable for them. So then they start to like pick fights or be aggravated because they feel like that's
why
the norm.
That's people end up in toxic relationships, right? And then when the relationship's like smooth, they're like, my partner's cheating. I got to start a fight, or I
think
feel
that's the physiological explanation. Or like there are,
and I guess that's probably where like meditation and stuff really would help, right? To like start to feel your emotions and understand them.
But there can be, but
it's just like,
it
it's so
have to be. I think that, well, first of all, I want to just say one thing quick. What you're talking about, so many kids, we were talking about ADHD earlier, so many kids, PTSD and ADHD look almost exactly the same in kids and even adults. Like the symptoms are very, very similar. I'm like, half the kids I work with, they're like, they have ADHD, they need this medication. I'm like, I think they have PTSD. They have post-traumatic stress disorder. Like that it looks the exact same. And
because they're kids. It manifests differently probably at a young age.
Absolutely.
Than it does when you're an adult
and so they get told, that they have this, that you have ADHD and you can't concentrate and you're a bad kid. And like people do try, like kids fight to get their needs met, and they do it in different ways. Like they definitely do it with, the kind of ADHD kid who like acts out all the time. But there's also like my self-preservation mode was perfectionism. It's like, I'll be perfect in everything that I do. And like the problem with that is that doesn't get recognized at all. It only gets validated. So a lot of kids are struggling with internal feelings and like, but no one recognizes it because they look like they're doing well on the surface. And then there's like the mascot, the one that's like making jokes and making everyone laugh and kind of like deterring from that way. And then there's the other one, the other like archetype kind of the dysfunctional family is the lost child. And that's a kid who, stays in their room, just stays quiet, and that's how they survive. And it's just...
if you look at our family dynamic, we probably had all three at one point.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
Mascot, perfectionist, and lost child. Absolutely. It's hilarious.
So it's just interesting. I forgot what my other point was with this, but growing up, just how it looks kind of the same, and people they have these coping mechanisms. It's all they ever learn how to do. Then to say, I remember where I was going with this. Sometimes to tell someone, like you just need to meditate. Like it just doesn't. Their thoughts are fucking racing, and they don't have time. Like to tell someone, and like I think it could be we need to talk about it in a much different way. Like first of all, I totally believe in medication. Sometimes when someone's in a deep, deep hole, you're not going to go meditate and go work out and eat healthy. Like you would have been doing those things the whole time. Like they physically cannot get there because they're so depressed.
And that's why I love processes, right? Because if the ultimate goal even is something as simple, right, as we consider simple as meditating, somebody just cannot meditate. They just don't have the capacity because they have high cortisol levels or PTSD or whatever it may be. Well, maybe that's the end goal. Maybe we take actionable steps to get to that goal. And if this doesn't work, this path here, then we try a different path. But that end goal remains the same, right?
I love the idea of meditation, right? And that's the next evolution of like mental health. But when your basic human needs aren't being met, that means nothing, right? Like you're putting gasoline in a car that doesn't run. Like the transmission's broken. Like what this gasoline does nothing. Like, it's filled to the brim. I've been meditating.
The psychological theory behind that is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you don't have a safe place to sleep, a safe place, like enough food, enough like your basic needs met, there's no point in working on trauma and going through other things. Like that's why, people who struggle with addiction, like you kind of have to stop using the alcohol first before you can really make some transformational change.
I see that with so many. I mean, I've been sober for 5 years. Adam's just about there. And I love it when people reach out to me like, dude, how did you like get sober? What's it like? Or what can I do? And I'm like, first, you have to stop drinking. And stop drinking for a month isn't going to, like, that's not long enough. Like, I didn't see any real change in my mindset probably till like a year. Like you see little things along the way, but it was like a year separated from drinking. And I was like, oh, okay. This is why I was drinking. Or like now I'm actually regulated to a point where like, this is base level. Okay. I didn't even know what baseline was.
Exactly. And that is, but it's the same thing with people who are struggling with other mental illnesses. It's like they don't have a baseline. That's where I think medication can help create a baseline. Then you can start practicing all the self-care and, things that are actually going to make your life worth living. But sometimes you need a little help with that.
A little pick me up. Do you ever think that, and I know in severe cases, you need antipsychotic medications, you need, Adderall, and you need these medications for the most severe cases. But do you think it should be maybe more reserved for as like a last resort rather than the therapeutic? And now, obviously, if somebody doesn't have the capacity to pay for therapy or, have the time, or whether it's money or time, maybe we do, say, hey, let's give you this medication until you can find that time and money, and then we can do this like more productive thing later. But I always wonder are we overprescribing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I definitely think we're overprescribing. Like, that's the thing, is the pill is not the answer. The pill is one of many things. Like, you have to be doing I think I was telling you, this book I read called The Depression Cure is really interesting. And I don't like the word cure because I don't think you just cure it. I think it's kind of a lifelong chronic thing. But it was talking about how, like, we need to go outside more. We need to eat better, and we need to sleep better. We need to exercise. And, like, doing those things are all really great things to help if you have depression or anxiety, specifically, or anything really. But, like, everyone should be doing those things all the time for their mental health.
But when you're really depressed, and I tend to get depressed sometimes, like, I'm not going to the gym.
No, exactly.
There's no
That's where
thing
I
can say to myself. There's no video I can watch that is going to get me up and go to the gym. Even though I know that if I do that, I will feel some kind of better. Like, it's not going to be amazing right away. But I'm not doing that. And I'm not going to eat healthy. Like, I'm depressed. Like, I'm going to roll to the fridge and eat whatever's easy and has tons of sugar in it. It's going to make me feel better now.
Sometimes you're just going to get through the day, But that's why I think there's, like, that a pill can help with those types of things to create that baseline and to give you the ability to take care of yourself. But we overprescribe. Probably people just think, oh, I'm going to take this pill and I'm going to be fine. It's all going to be better. And that's, like, not the case.
You have to do the work too.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with getting sober. As my friend's like, I got sober for 2 months and nothing changed. I'm like, did you change any other aspect of your life?
There's a reason. Well,
did you work out? Did you, like, eat a little healthier? Did you think about things? Like, did you do some, like, introspection? And it's like, no. And then you just gave up, now you're drinking again. It's like, yeah, you have to want, like, sobriety is a choice every day. And it's like, it's like, it's an easy choice now, but it's still a choice. Like, you have to think about it constantly. And
but don't you think it's a symptom? Not like drinking is the symptom.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not the problem.
I look at my drinking and I know, I don't know exactly why, but I know why I drank. It was like, I have anxiety. And I knew that while I was drinking, but I didn't know where that anxiety came from. And through use of psychedelics, for me, has been, like, life-changing, because I didn't start really using psychedelics as, like, a tool for therapy until I was, like, 3 years into my sobriety. And I really just wanted to, like, peel back the layers further and say, like, why was I so anxious? And psychedelics have helped me figure that out a little bit more, because you just don't, like, it's there all the time. Like, when you really do have those epiphanies, you're like, oh, well, duh, like, it's been in front of my face this whole time. But sometimes you just need help seeing it. Like, I view psychedelics as, like, medication. Like, for me, that's sort of my get back to baseline, or helps me settle into, like, being able to just look at things a little bit differently, a little more objectively, a little bit more honestly sometimes. It's really, you can't lie to yourself when you're on them.
And what I like about that therapy in general, and I've never actually done a psychedelic, but what I like about the idea with the therapy, not sure why that's funny. What I like about that idea is that it's not a daily thing. It's not something that you have to perpetually maintain and remember to take.
That's what always freaked me out about, like, prescribed drugs. It was like, I have to take this every day for how long till I feel better? When is that going to be? What if I forget? Then am I going to be all out of, like, whack if I forget one day, because I forget to, like, do something every day? Like, that's why I've always been kind of scared of going down that prescribed drugs road. And I know I have, like, a tendency to be have like, I have an addictive personality. I'm obsessed with things, and it scares me because like I've gone to many physicians and therapists, and sometimes they will prescribe me something after like talking to them for 5 minutes. Like I had a doctor like was trying to prescribe me stuff. I'm like, I've said 5 things to you. Like, how could you possibly know what's going to work for me? Well, you said you didn't sleep very well last night, so I'm going to give you Ambien. It's like, I don't think that's what I need. I mean, it could be, but like you've heard me just, I mean, have you never had a bad night's sleep? Like,
that's been a huge part of the problem, I think, is the company I work for actively is trying to advocate for, do you know that a doctor who goes to get their medical degree only does a 1 week like course on addiction? And yet probably millions of people struggle with substance use disorder in some way or problematic use. And it's like,
it's really easy to get prescribed stuff.
Yeah.
And you, like, if you have half a brain, you can just look up like, what do I need to say to get the drugs that I want?
Oh,
like,
doctor shopping is totally real and like, and very possible. And it's really easy to get things. And
then also doctors get money for prescribing you stuff. I mean, that's how the opioid crisis began.
Yeah, sometimes. I think they try not to
anymore.
Encourage
there
that.
are lots of great doctors out there who do the work and understand what they're doing, but they don't get any education on it. And so my company does a residency for doctors and does a lot of advocacy in the medical field to tell people what to look for. Like, you know, sometimes people are really good at hiding their addictions, and it's not just about the pill shopping or anything, but even just like asking people about their drinking and like talking to them about their mental health. Like same thing. When I told my doctor, like, I'm anxious, he's like, here's some Xanax. It's like, cool.
It's I've had my run-in with the law with drinking, my DUI, and I've been to a lot of like the therapy classes involved with that. And it's tough, to be honest, sometimes with like, especially like in any sort of judicial system, because if you say that you do something, they're going to treat you like like, if you're like, I drink, I remember a specific time for me, I think I really didn't, this was before I had a drinking problem. Like my drinking problem didn't probably start till I was like 22, 23, really. And I was like 19 and got in some trouble. And I just like, yeah, I drink once in a while. And they like they started treating me, and I had to go through all these other things. Like I was just trying to be honest. I'm like, all right, I have to do this court mandated thing. I'm spending my time here. My thought process was like, let's get as much out of it as I can. Let's be honest with these people. And that honesty just made my life absolutely terrible.
That's the problem with standardized systems. That's why things need to be nuanced, and nuance is hard and probably more expensive because it's not as easy to just, it's not as easy or costly, a cost saving to, you know, analyze each situation as it has its own merits, right? It's easier to just say, if they mention drinking, they go into this bucket. If they don't mention drinking, they go into this bucket. And then just do that with every single bucket so that you have the standardized system. And so
there is a difference between drinking one night a week and drinking every night of the week.
Yeah.
Like there's a huge difference. It's also like, how many drinks did you have that one night?
Can you stop at 2 or 3?
Was it 2 or
right.
Did you black out and
how do you act?
You know, make your life terrible.
There are so many different nuances to alcoholism.
I didn't drink every day.
Yeah.
But you bet when I did, I don't remember much.
Yeah.
Like it was to excess almost every time.
And there are nuances to it, right? Like, you know, some people can drink every day and like operate and function just fine. And they're doing, you know, God knows what harm to their body physically, but they can actually function and they're okay and they're not unpleasant to be around. And like, if that's because I tend to be a proponent of do whatever drug you're doing that you enjoy to do, if it's not harming anybody else, do it to your heart's content. And hopefully it's not harming you, right? But, you know, by all means, self-medicate to your heart's desire. But, you know, at a certain point, and that's why I think I've heard a lot of stories about psychedelics and what they can do. And I think that what they do, and there's a lot of theories behind it, but one of the theories is that they shut down the default mode network in the brain, which is like this ability to kind of just go through life as an NPC. You get stuck in your habits and your routines, and a lot of the habits and routines are addictions and like unhealthy tendencies. And so what this does is it kind of jumbles that around a little bit, and you kind of get to see the world as a child again, with the childlike wonder where you're not like, every time I walk to the fridge, I do it in this fashion. It's like, you know, maybe I go this way or something like that. And you're just doing that with all kinds of different thought processes. Again, just things that I've heard. And so, you know, if you can do psychedelics in a healthy way, right? It doesn't have to be macrodose at Burning Man, in the mud with a bunch of people, someone died, right? Like next to you. You can actually do it, in a therapeutic way without being, the stereotypical hippie or burnout. And I think that can be therapeutic for a lot of people, again, just based on things that I've heard from people very close to me.
What is your position on like psychedelics in the mental health field?
I'm
like
all
these
for it.
ketamine therapies and
I think it's interesting. I think we should be studying the medicinal properties of those things. I guess as a therapist, I would suggest doing it in like a clinical
of course
way
obviously,
and not just like
always
popping mushrooms and thinking you're
gonna
on your way to mental health journey.
well that's the problem like the internet is like
Well, that's
I think
my issue with cannabis too, is that people have this like huge misconception that it's all about wellness, and it's like that's such bullshit. Like
Yeah.
let's treat it like booze, like if you want to smoke weed, do it.
there's probably some
Do it.
mental health benefits to alcohol
Sure.
done in the right way, right? Like I
People
can't use it, but there's probably some people that do benefit from it. It's probably okay to come home and have a glass of wine and like
absolutely. I don't ever want to demonize the drug. I think it's the way we use it and why, and the way we look at it. I think
my first experience with psychedelics, I ate so much because that was the amount that they told you to take. And it's just like, that was an amazing life-changing experience. But like, is that how I should have been introduced to it? No, like taking less and like in the clinical setting, or like, because they're so criminalized and because they're so taboo, there's not a lot of good information out there on like proper dosages and usages.
Yeah, and they, you don't know where you're getting them sometimes. Like fentanyl is a real bad issue that we're having right now, that people are dying who aren't drug addicts necessarily. They're just someone who wanted to try something one time and then they die because there's so much fentanyl and shit. So, and like, I know that psychedelics are a little bit different, but you never know. So like, that's the other problem with them, is you don't know if they're safe or not, depending on what you're getting them from. But I definitely, kind of like you were saying, Adam, I think it does have, I don't know all the science behind what it does in your brain, but I think something else it does is it does provide a different perspective and an exception. So like, there's kind of a theory in therapy sometimes that like people get so patternized, like you were saying, that they kind of forget what it even feels like to feel light or unstressed or happy. And it provides just this other exception in the brain, a different pathway that maybe hasn't been there in a long time. And they're like, oh, okay, I do know how this feels.
And the analogy that I've heard is that what your brain is when you're a child, right? When you're first born, is this like field, just this blank slate, right? And then as you create these synaptic connections over time, they become dirt paths, and then they become roads, and then they become superhighways. And it's just easy to go down that synaptic path. Your brain just does it instantaneously, and it's going off of that path is a little bit more difficult, right? And from what I understand about psychedelics is it breaks that up so that like that superhighway is now like, it doesn't have the barriers on the side of it, and there are little off roads, and you can kind of meander off to the side and see what's out there. And again, it's simply just perspective shift, right? It like gives you the capacity to see things from, not the cynic or the idealist or Lindsey the therapist. You can kind of see it from a different like reality. It's interesting from what I've heard.
I think too, it's interesting because like drugs and alcohol, the bad ones, they inhibit your brain from making dopamine. You get like a rush, and then you can't create it on your own as much. And that's the problem with coping with these things.
well, getting sober from alcohol, that's like the hardest thing. Like, well, how do I have fun if I'm not drinking? Because I go
feeling
to
happy.
concerts, I drink. I go on a date, I drink. I go to a family function, I drink. I go to dinner, I drink. Anytime I was like, anything that was fun, alcohol was there to help me have more fun. And it's really hard to figure out, like, how much of what I was doing did I even like? Did I really like these people? Like, how so many of my friends, and like how strong a connection did I have with these people, or was I just drunk around them all the time? And it's sad because you lose like a lot of your peers and friend groups when you get sober, but the ones who stick around are the ones that matter. And like the ones you make afterwards, like dating sober is hard without alcohol. But the connections I do have with women that I'm dating is so much stronger because like I really want to be in this because like there's no alcohol. I'm not masquerading. Like this is intentional because when you're sober, everything is much more intentional in general, which is great, but it's scary and it's hard. And not drinking is a red flag. You're like, oh, you're sober? Uh-oh.
I think
Do
that's
you have a problem? Are you the crazy person? It's like, no, I'm just...
No, I think it brings up their stuff.
well, that's what it is. They like...
protecting their own.
Well, are you going to judge me if I drink?
Oh, wait, well, I drink. How's that going to be?
Yeah, it's like, I don't care if you drink. Like, do you drink like a normal person or are you like me and you're a psychopath? Because if you're a psychopath, this isn't going to work. If you're like me when I drink, it's not going to work. But if you're like a normal, adjusted, you know, healthy individual who has a couple of drinks to like, you know, let loose on a Friday night, like that's fine. But if you're going to, you know, end up naked in a random bed, it might not be so good.
I was talking to a buddy yesterday about it, and he was telling me, and he doesn't have a problem with alcohol, like as far as I know, but he's had some experiences. And he was telling me about how, I hope he watches this, and I think he will. He passed out one New Year's coming in to his apartment, and just like, he said he just collapsed. It was like dead of winter. It was New Year's, so it was freezing out. And he woke up several hours later with the door still open, just like halfway in, halfway out. And that's the one we deem like
Dude, my
societally
father
acceptable.
Found me.
I don't know.
It was like a school day after school, and I was like, I was probably 15 or 16. I had fell through the screen door. Like there's a screen door. I'd fell through the screen door, and when he found me, I was laying on the screen through the door. It's like 4:00 in the afternoon. He's coming home from work, and I don't know how I got there. I know how the
Your
day
friends
started.
dropped you off.
Well, I mean, maybe.
I remember.
Oh, she remembers. Yeah, he found me. My punishment was having to go to school the next day. I've never been so hungover in my life. We drank, the idea was to get a watermelon and fill it with Everclear, grain alcohol, you know, like just pure alcohol, and then eat the watermelon. And then we just smashed the watermelon and drank the bottle. And I remember just how bad it burned. And not drinking that much because it doesn't take that much on probably an empty stomach. And then just, it was just like 4 p.m. and I'm getting screamed at, you know, and in my head, I'm like, Dad's an idiot. Why is he mad? What's up, bro?
What are some of the therapies that you suggest for people with alcoholism that struggle getting out of that?
That's a good question. Well, honestly, I think depends. I don't necessarily recommend AA. It works for some people. You should check it out and see if it works for you.
I thought it was weird.
It's a lot. It was created by, two old white dudes.
That's the problem.
It is the
Old white
problem.
guys ruined everything, man.
It is. It's not very culturally sensitive or even like geared towards women. Like it's really, so I know
It's
a lot of people.
incestuous.
It is.
It's a very incestuous group. I think a lot of them, they trade alcohol for like having sex with each other.
Yep.
Sorry.
Sure. Sometimes, yeah. That's
Sorry.
what happens.
If
at
AA
treatment.
helped you, like I shouldn't be bashing it because it has probably helped a
No,
ton
it's
of
helped
people.
A ton of people. I don't bash it necessarily. There's a lot of other. I do think finding a community is really helpful, though. Actually, a huge one I love. It's called Sober AF, and they do sober tailgating, sober baseball games. Like it's all about how much fun you can have in sobriety, and there's no like requirement if you have to have 30 days. Like you just want to just be sober at the game or whatever. So I think finding a community, like you were saying, like learning how to have fun, meeting other people who've been through it because it's really hard. You might want to talk to someone.
AA was a little bit troublesome for me too because they look really poorly on like psychedelics and some of that.
That's
which is funny because one of those guys
The
used
founder was the psychedelic guy.
Yeah, but and I get it. Like some people are like, I'm just an addict. If I do anything, like I know personally, I've been, I didn't drink for 6 months and then I took mushrooms and I got wasted. And I'm like, okay, like I see how that's a problem for some people, but
sure. AA is very there's a lot of
like you said,
controversy
it's one dimensional
in the recovery community right now because there's people who are emphasizing harm reduction, which is kind of like, cross addiction is real. Some people really do need to just stop it all, but some people can't. I have lots of friends who struggled with like heroin, but can have a beer every once in a while.
I'm
Go
so
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say the premise of AA is just like gaslighting to me a little bit though, because it's to circle back to that, everything's gaslighting. It's the like original premise when I went in was you are powerless and you need a higher power in order to overcome this addiction. I didn't. you didn't. And so obviously there are exceptions to the rules, but without having that nuance, and especially it's like saying like having that negative sort of premise and approach, like I feel is this like negative feedback loop. So there's like they relapse and they're like, oh, that's right, I forgot, I can't do it on my own. It's impossible. These guys told me that. And so I think that works for some people. Some people need to be gaslit into doing productive things, but you know, I don't know if that's a great like foundation.
It's really hard to quit drinking for somebody else. Like I tried to quit drinking for other people a lot. I quit drinking to save relationships. I quit drinking to, you know, because people like, but when you quit drinking for other people, in the back of your mind, you're like, well, I don't really have a problem. I'm just going to stop to appease these people. All right, I'm going to stop now and then I'll get back to it. Like it didn't really, I mean, I tried to get sober. There's 2 attempts before it happened. Like I had 2 like pretty long, like 6-month stints of sobriety that were kind of for the wrong reasons. But I knew in my heart, like you can't keep this pace up. Like something bad's going to happen soon. Amongst all the bad things that were already happening, it felt like something catastrophic was going to come if I kept drinking. But
don't you think having each other is helpful in like?
Absolutely.
Like that's what I mean.
I think I would have.
Community.
I would have done it by myself, but having Adam, like having a sober friend who like understands the plight of sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He kind of forced me into it because I don't have a lot of friends because I'm a pretty introverted person generally. And, you know, I'm not the warmest person. I can come across as a little bit cold if you first meet me. Like once you get to know me, I'm a warm person, but you know, even then it's like, is he a robot? But yeah, once he quit drinking, I was just like, you know, what am I going to go up by myself? No. It's like, Kyle, go. Let's go. Let's go to Zanzibar. Let's go. And he was just like,
I think there was quite a few people when I quit drinking that were like, no, like who?
You're fine.
We need a dance monkey dance guy. Like I'm the dance monkey dance.
You
guy.
were the dance monkey dance guy. Is there like a healthy way to binge drink? Is our keg stands healthy? As a therapist,
I wouldn't say they're healthy.
Okay.
But just because you do one doesn't mean you have a problem.
Dude, drinking for me, like I didn't even know how to have 2. It was like, no, blackout, and then the fun starts. Like that was like my logic.
Mine was 2.
Terrible. Like how many nights were just spent, like the first like 2 hours of the night were spent just putting as much alcohol in as possible. And then when crazy stuff would happen, I would be like, what the hell? Why did that happen?
Well, the other thing I was going to say about drinking is if you are a daily drinker, I think it's the only drug you can die from withdrawal.
Benzos.
Oh, maybe
benzodiazepines can
but
also kill you.
So you have to be careful. You can have seizures. So you have to be. So if someone's like really, really hardcore drinking, they might be like have physical addiction to it. You probably have to go to detox. There's tons of treatment out there. I know you guys didn't do treatment, but treatment can be really helpful for people who just really need like that reset and to just like kind of get out of their environment for a while.
Yeah, I always feel bad because people are like, how did you do it? And I don't always have a good answer. I'm like, well, I got tired of like feeling like shit. It was a really bad hangover that really kind of was like, I feel terrible. I don't want to feel this terrible. Why do I keep doing this? I have anxiety. It's making it worse. And then it just like, I mean, for me, it was like an epiphany. Like I was in the shower, hungover. I'd done a bunch of drugs too. I was doing cocaine all night long. I did a bunch of other substances, and I was hungover, and I was just in my girlfriend at the time shower, and I was just like, this isn't. I do not want to be this person any longer.
Mindfulness and self-honesty are like the biggest keys to unlocking that sobriety, I feel like, because a lot of the time we justify our actions, we justify our addictions, right? And so by understanding like, okay, this is just exacerbating these other problems that I have, the depression and the damage to my relationships and the anxiety, like, and being able to understand that and be like, oh, okay, like I'm damaging myself, and because a lot of people don't want to be honest with themselves.
Well, that was for me. I was like, well, if I keep drinking, I always have as soon as I quit drinking, I'm going to be fine. That was always my mindset. Well, I'm just going to keep partying for now. And when it's time, I'll quit, and then I'll get my shit together. And then you quit and you're like, oh, my shit is really not together. And you look at the uphill battle of getting it together. Like that's an arduous task there to go uphill. But eventually you just make the decision to like, getting sober for me was like, oh, I've been the problem. It wasn't the alcohol. Like I get in my own way. I'm not that fit. I'm not that smart. I'm not that good at my life. I'm not that good at my job. I'm not that good at relationships. And You know, you like when you're drunk, you just don't see that, or you just blame the alcohol, and then you get sober, and it's like, ah, shit.
You say
Now I have to live with my own decisions.
I was going to say, you say this a lot, but a lot of the time, I think a lot of people's vices are coping mechanisms, and they're outs, right? It's like, well, if I didn't do this, like my life would be better. I'd have more money. I'd have better relationships. But
Victim mentality.
sure, yeah. So it's like this, self-fulfilling prophecy a little bit. So
I think it is a matter of incongruence too, of just, a lot of therapists, when they are doing work with someone working on their recovery, use motivational interviewing, just really just helping people get their values aligned. Like, oh, you're not doing any of the things that you want to, and there's this one thing holding you back. Interesting.
And this is why I really appreciate your perspective, like being a licensed therapist, because it's like, I feel like sometimes it's a little bit difficult for he and I to speak about sobriety, because it's like, how did you do it? You just stop. It's like, it's not going to work for a lot of people. It's like, how do you stop being depressed? Just stop being depressed.
I think it
like
was
that
from
doesn't work.
Shameless. It might have been a quote from Shameless, actually, but it's just like, it resonated with me. I heard it later on, even after I got sober, but it was like, I look at like the top 20 worst events in my life, like 18, 19 of them, there was lots of alcohol involved. And it's just like, there seems to be one, thing that's remained constant. There's one constant variable in all of these bad things that have happened to me. Alcohol. Oh, okay. Me and the alcohol. It's like, okay, but I just can't handle it. I don't do well with it. I'm anxious, and that's why I liked alcohol, because it was just a YOLO. Like there was no anxiety. I was in this moment. Tomorrow didn't matter. Yesterday didn't matter. Just what are we doing now? And fun. And then paying the price the next day. And
certain personality types are more prone to alcoholism and addiction, right? Because we were kind of speaking, or we were speaking about this outside of the podcast, but sometimes I feel like there are people that think all the time and can't stop and can't manage it, right? I love thinking. When I'm in there, I'm like, this is neat. But a lot of people are in there and it's like overwhelming, and they're just doing it all the time. And then they drink and it quiets those voices. And I think the ADHD people, generally speaking, have that, where it's just always, it's like, shut up. And you drink and you're like, this is nice.
Yeah, a loud bar when you're sober is like, a loud bar when you're drunk. It's just like, yeah.
I have a metaphor that I use to tell kids about addiction, is that people are carrying a heavy backpack full of rocks, of their problems and feelings and secrets. And if we don't learn how to manage those, what happens is people try alcohol and drugs, and that goes to sleep. And it's totally true. I mean, alcohol, that's why people do it, is it makes you feel good for a little while, and you don't have to think about all that stuff. You can just, for people who don't, that's where meditation comes in, right? Like, you have to learn to live in the present and to be able to put your anxiety and your depression somewhere else for a while, and just feel kind of normal and in the moment and not have to think about all that stuff. And alcohol helps with that. But if that's the only way you can experience that, it's not good, right? And if it's becoming a problem where you're using it so much that you can't even not use it, that's how you want to feel all the time, that's also a problem.
And that's where strategies, come into play. Is, okay, if you're that type of personality type, that's going to be prone to that. And the DSM we're on the DSM-5 right now. Mm-hmm. DSM-6. Feel free to take notes.
I think it's 5.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's 5 or 6. But the next version, like, you can steal my stuff if you want. It's all good. But I think that's paramount, is like trying to understand that, and then find the strategies to, okay, some people are just, they want to quiet all the voices and they want to quiet all the noise and everything, and they're just not going to be able to sometimes, period, ever. And all you can do is mitigate it. So let's just figure out what the best strategy is to mitigate it, so that you can live as productive and fulfilling a life as possible in the absence of this, alcohol and drug use.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's the hard part is whatever worked for you might not work for you, might not work for you. Like, I deal with my anxiety through working out. I go to the gym. I am so in the moment and present. And then I kind of just like, you got that dopamine release there, and I feel so relaxed
you're at the gym,
after.
You're not in your head thinking about life. You're just doing the workouts.
Well, I go to a class. I do class workouts, so I'm talking to other people and focused on the workout. Yeah, and I don't.
I go and I'm in my head the whole time.
But that's okay too. I do that when I run.
No, like, it feels good. Like
when I walk or run.
Especially by the time I get to the sauna, and you really start to
yeah,
work out what I was just thinking about.
I think that you heard of hot girl walks?
No. Where are these at?
How can we
They're all
find
over
these?
Cheeseman. No, it's kind of a concept that like you put on a cute outfit and you like go for a walk and you kind of like solve all your problems in your head. Because I'm pretty sure walking and doing the left and right side of your brain is the same as doing EMDR. And so walking can really soothe your thoughts and help you work through them and create a different pathway than
There's
the
hot girl
stress.
walks. I know what I do. It's ugly troll driving.
Yeah,
Ugly
probably.
troll road trips.
Because your
I'm
brain,
gonna go ugly troll it across the country.
driving is accessing, it's the same as playing music. It's accessing your muscle memory and like a different part of your brain. And so when you do that and then think through things, it makes different pathways.
Yeah,
That's
and
the
there's
theory behind
there's a
EMDR.
myriad of reasons. Like I like to drive between here and Austin. One, because I'm scared of flying because planes don't make any sense at all.
Just
Also-
a metal death machine.
Yeah. Also, I enjoy like the drive, and it's very cathartic. And I get to sort stuff out. I'm not on anybody else's agenda or time. Like if I want to stop and piss, I eat what I want. It's something about it is very pleasant for me.
And speaking to what you were saying, I think creating new pathways in your brain is sort of, it has to be done where you're putting yourself in uncomfortable positions or different positions. It doesn't even have to be uncomfortable. Like rather than taking this path that you take every time, take a different one, right? Like try skipping for a little bit. Just do something that just to switch it up, right? And that's why I think the people that are most, have such cognitive abilities later on in life are the ones that are constantly learning. And it's not even necessarily learning, it's just the process of keeping your brain engaged and active. And if you're just going through the motions and doing your routines, you're not keeping it active. You're just doing those synaptic sort of like superhighways. So try something new, try something different. Like, tomorrow at work, when you go to work, right? Like, try a different cup of coffee you never tried before, right? Like do something new,
Take a different way.
take a different route to work,
Yeah,
right?
you should do that.
I do that a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if I do it. I just do that anyways.
I physically
I wonder.
can't
I
do
wonder.
it.
You can't do
Every
it.
time I get to work, I was like, dang it, I was going to do a different way. Like I can't remember it.
I go different
not a
ways
morning
home
person.
all the time. I'm also not a morning person, and I don't have it. Like if I had to be somewhere on time, I'd probably just go the most efficient way because I'm running late anyways. But like when I can go different ways because I have time, I like to. Although I'm a creature of habit sometimes.
We all are.
Yeah. Well, today my
consistency is
habitual path to the gym was interrupted because of a detour, and then I had to go to the shop and get some stuff out of the Jeep, and it was great because you know what happened? Because I didn't know what I was going to eat for lunch, and I was going to go to Burger King, and I was like, whatever, Burger King sounds fine. I'm just going to have a bad day today. I have lots of bad days with diet. But I drove by a Culver's, and I was like, I would have never driven by this Culver's. I would have never realized it was here, and that's where I went for lunch. So I got to enjoy a good lunch that I would have never even thought about had I gone the typical way.
And those things are like those types of things. And this is coming from somebody who's never studied any of this. It's just from what I've read as a layperson. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But from what I understand, that's like the most conducive to growth, just as an individual and for your actual neurochemistry in your brain.
Yeah.
Now, can we go off subject for a minute?
Please.
I want to talk about aliens. Do aliens exist?
from
You're a
a-
therapist.
from a
You're
therapist.
smart.
Yeah.
Why
you're
don't you
supposed to
think
know this.
they've been confirmed?
Have they?
Yes, that guy, I forgot his name, said it in trial or whatever.
Yeah, but the things that they
The
say,
disclosure is
the things that they say aren't, hey, aliens from another world exist. They always phrase it in a way that like gives you an out.
they
It's like,
they have a body. They have an alien body.
okay, so here's my
But
theory.
why wouldn't aliens exist? Why wouldn't they? Of course they exist.
Of course they exist. See, for me, it's that easy. Adam's like, no, they don't, dude.
You
Yeah,
think
no,
that,
I think that there's Brian Keating thinks that they don't. I think there has to be a possibility, and I'm not as smart as Brian Keating, but I think the aliens have to exist in the universe. There are too many stars,
Probabilistically,
too
they
many
have to.
galaxies, and then like even out and we can only see the 100 billion galaxies with about 100 billion stars in each in the observable universe. We can't even see outside of the observable universe. We don't know if there are multiverses. There has to be life elsewhere. It's probably even like if this is a simulation, something created us, right? Like it's whatever created us. Even if you believe in God, that's life, right? Something else is out there, right? Logically thinking, right? But sorry for that. But in terms of aliens on Earth, it's just
The evidence isn't great.
like logically, I can never get myself there.
I don't believe
Like we have cameras that can, everybody has a camera. Like that's Neil deGrasse Tyson's thing, right? Like everybody has a smartphone in their pocket. We can't get one good, like really solid, conclusive image.
I don't think it's quite as prevalent as YouTube would let you believe. Like I definitely don't believe. Yeah, like, but I think that there's something, but maybe they don't.
What's your argument too? Like if they're so smart, why are they crashing and like?
Sure.
You know why?
And
I figured it out.
what is it?
They're the alien ships that are crashing are the ocean gates of space. They're the rich billionaire idiot aliens. They're like, let's go to Earth, and they're like, we're not going to fund that. Nobody cares about it. And it's like, well, I'm going to take me and my buddies in our like spacecraft that's not that well made, and they get here, and then it implodes in our atmosphere because they didn't calculate very correctly.
You're going to Earth? Okay.
How do we know aliens aren't more like animals? Like, how do we know that whales aren't aliens?
I mean, you look at an
Octopus.
octopus. All of
Yeah.
those cephalopods.
Yeah.
They're very alien, right? Like, I mean, some people think that they are. I mean, that's a fun thought experience. Is it like, oh, octopus probably are from a complete different lineage than the rest of life here. Could have came transpermically. You know?
One of my many coping skills to kind of forget about
Escapism.
escapism is Reddit.
That's what aliens are. It's a very
Reddit and
fun
aliens and-
escapism.
My favorite, there was a documentary we watched, and this guy, it was kind of, you knew it was kind of bullshit from the beginning, but my favorite part was he was like using his alien abduction to like cheat on his wife.
Love that.
He he met this woman at a like convention, and he told his wife, like, this is my space wife. We had in space, they made us get married and have babies and all this stuff, and he was just like totally banging this other conspiracy chick and lying to his wife. This is my space wife, babe. You gotta accept it.
I'm taking notes.
See, some escapism is healthy. I don't know. I don't know if that is. There's a guy in Japan who just like made like a $20,000 suit, a dog suit. Have you seen that?
Yes, I
That
saw
freaks
that.
me out. I did not like that at all.
I don't think anybody likes that except him. But he's doing
Well, there's
something.
somebody.
That's his escapism. And you know what? If he's not harming anybody, then
Oh,
you
it's
do
not.
I mean, it's
wrong.
just
You
furries
do
to the.
you.
maxed out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like the
Nth
king
degree.
furry. They just we are
What do
not
you guys
worthy.
think of people that have sexual attractions to objects?
Like people that want to fuck a lamppost.
Yeah, that are like married to roller coasters and stuff.
Isn't there a word
I've
for
seen
that?
that.
What's the word for that? I thought there was a word for it.
Those people are
Probably.
severely mentally ill, correct?
I think they just have huge intimacy.
Although I
and
mean,
rejection.
I've seen everybody's seen the
complexes.
boob light. I think I've been laying in. You've never seen a boob light?
No, I know
It's
what
like the
lights you're
round-
talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not like super attracted to it, but it does look like a boob. Like I'm not laying in bed like pleasuring myself to it, but
What?
like,
Why'd they give it a nipple?
you know, if
The nipple is
the
unnecessary.
if the grid did go down and there was no longer easy access to like porn on the internet,
So in an apocalypse,
I might
you're
have to-
jerking off to boob lights.
if it gets to that, I hope it doesn't, but like that's as
Hey, I
far
don't
as
kink shame.
that's as far as I think that's as far as I'd go.
Yeah, we're like borderline kink shaming right now. you do your thing.
All right.
I'm obsessed with, I'm such a voyeur, and I think that's part of why I like being a therapist, is I'm like very interested in the human condition and like all the different crazy
Well, I mean, what's a sexy object?
types
Is that
of
lamp
people.
sexy? Adam, do you find any of these inanimate objects attractive?
Not into inanimate objects, not into animals. I have pretty vanilla taste in, yeah, heterosexuality. I'm pretty boring.
There's a whole
I
show
like hot chicks.
on Hulu that you guys should watch. I think it's called like Strange Love or something. And it's all about people who have like really strange, or I shouldn't say strange.
Well, I'm worried about
Different-
exploring that because, like, what if it like opens
Different-
up something I didn't know was in there? Like, that's why I don't want to go see the Barbie movie.
Why?
I'm afraid it might turn me gay.
Oh,
That's what Ben Shapiro said.
yeah,
He
that's
said
the
if I
point
went
of
and see
it.
it, I'd be gay, or even worse, a feminist or a liberal. Oh God.
The point
Yeah,
of it
there's
is
nothing
to
good that
turn
can
you
come from
gay,
it.
and it worked on me.
Well, my heterosexuality is hanging on by threads at this point, anyways. I don't need I don't need any nudges over there. I might just go gay. God, I wish it was that easy. I wish I could go gay.
And that's the thing is like obviously a lot of people that have hatred towards certain communities. It's a projection mechanism, right?
Well, like how often is it the person who's like the
common.
most homophobic that Oh, he's closeted gay?
He was getting a
Weird.
blowjob, like that congressman that was trying to ban gay marriage or whatever. Oh, he's getting a blowjob from a male prostitute, right? Turns out
what's his
the
name?
pastor from Colorado Springs,
Ted
Haggard.
Ted Haggard, yeah.
Yeah.
That's my favorite story.
He was in a relationship with the dude for like 3 years, and the dude was going to out him, and finally he's just like, you got me. Yeah, I've got it. Sorry, guys. I know all that anti-gay stuff. Like, whatever. I have some self-hate, whatever. Very bizarre.
So messed up.
And yeah, people just go like, I don't have that kind of time. Like, it just like, that's where your energy is going, buddy. Like, to just like,
It is a weird hill to die on sometimes, of just like, nope, just this one group of people, I'm just gonna fight against them for the rest of my life.
Kyle and I were kind of talking about that a little bit earlier. So rather, like, it's just easy because we're talking about universal basic income, and we always come around to this, but like, this is an idea that I thought was a little bit interesting. Is a lot of people don't want to see the floor raised, even if it means their outcomes are going to be a little bit better, because people then catch up to them. They want people to be beneath them for some reason, like so that they can have a superiority complex or feel like their life has meaning, because that's a lot of the time I feel what gives their life meaning is being better than some group of people, or convincing themselves that they are better than some group of people. It's really sad. Tribalism.
I think too, it is still connected to like a superiority kind of thing, but that's what I was saying earlier about like, go talk to people and have interactions with people, because
who's that guy? Oh my God. He was the dude that converted a bunch of Ku Klux Klan members. He got him
He was
to
the
quit.
black guy, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that-
just by
there was that
literally just
movie.
by having dinner with them and talking to them, and they're just like,
there was a guy, I listened to like a NPR story or something. It was very similar. He was gay, and he was going around knocking on people's doors, and half the people that were like, no, I didn't vote for legal gay marriage. He was like, why? And a lot of them were just like, oh, they don't have a super strong conviction necessarily, but a lot of people just were like, well, I don't know anyone who's gay. And like, by him, he said he would talk to them for 15 or 20 minutes. And by the end of it, like, so many people were like, I didn't think of it that way. Like, well, you seem like a nice person. I don't want to hurt you. Because that's the thing, is that's where that empathy comes in, of like,
well, and then
meet people who are going through these. Like, everyone, people are all against welfare and shit. I'm like, how many people do you know on welfare? You think people on welfare are the ones that are corrupting or like tanking America? Like, no.
The term welfare queen is so silly to me. It's like these people are living lavishly because they have a phone.
Yes. Well, it's like, who are you? Like, do you know what it's like to live in this world without an iPhone?
Yeah. It's a necessity. It's a necessity.
I see people
Can't
strung
work.
out at the gas station who are hanging on to their sanity by threads. They have phones.
Like, it's
they
okay to have a
literally
phone.
crawled out from like the river beneath us. Like, they're literally living like in the sewers, and they came out to go to the gas station. That guy has a phone.
Because without it, you're completely disconnected
can't-
from society. You need it. It is a necessity at this point.
How do you apply for a job or take a phone call? Or if you have kids, you need to have a phone. And like,
Call your drug dealer.
It's not really that expensive to have an iPhone or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it's really not. So I think it's so stupid that people, and I'm like, go talk to someone on welfare. I, because of my job, work with all kinds of people in all kinds of different, socioeconomic status. And like, all my clients that are on Medicaid are on there for a really good reason. And like, when you take Medicaid away from a family, you're taking away from the kids too. Like, do you ever think about that? Like, people who don't want to pay for lunch at school, I'm like, what the fuck is your problem? Like, these are children we're talking about that are suffering. And I know, like, maybe you don't agree that because you saw someone on welfare who had their nails done. How do you know their friend didn't take them out to do it? How do you know they didn't get that?
People are going to take advantage of things regardless.
People, guys, name brand at
you
the
can't
thrift
punish
store.
the people who it benefits because of select few
That's a few bad apples.
misuse funds, right? It's
Yeah.
like, and that's their choice, and
It's so stupid. And they
that's gonna exist.
9%
no matter-
have no experience with anything. That's like my first question half the time when people have all these criticisms. I'm like, where did you get that information? From your own personal experience?
Well, a lot
Or
of
did you
problem
hear someone say it on...
is we always get back to this. Is people end up in echo chambers, and you also
Totally.
the way the media, they're not going to make any money. You have grifters and guys that they want to talk about these heated points because people just are so angry about them, but they don't even understand why they're angry. They just want to be angry. They want to be tribalistic. They want it's me versus you. It's hard.
And it gives yourself like some meaning and purpose in life, just being able to, you know, have a group that you identify with, is irrational or illogical as they may be, right? That's your group. And then without them, you're maybe a lone wolf, and a lot of people just can't handle that, right? Like I've been a little bit lucky in that, like, I've never minded marching to the beat of my own drum. So I think that's given me the perspectives that I have, and being able to just be like, I don't care what this group or that group or any group, like I'm going to do what I think makes the most sense. And I've been fortunate enough to, you know, have a best friend that, you know, thinks similarly. But a lot of people don't have that, and they need the tribe and they need the group to feel like they belong. And how do you get rid of that?
And you don't, it's like,
it's survival. I mean, I don't think I think it's completely innate and important that we have community, but do we question ourselves? Do we experience other things?
Your community is closed off and closed-minded.
Right.
Is it a good community to be a part of? Like,
but they don't know that if they're already a part of it.
No,
right.
They don't want, but people don't want to.
And that's the thing I have to accept. I like have to work on accepting. It's just that like
some people aren't going to change.
There's nothing I can say to that person that's going to make them change their mind. They
don't want to, because it's become part of who they are at their core, right? Like that's like why people are so against gay marriage, is because they need the Bible in their life to give their life purpose, and that way they can like do all these shitty things, and then they go, I'm a Christian and I'm sorry. I say sorry for my sins, but I'm going to sin. And the Bible says that man and woman get married, and that's just the way it is, and I don't care about anything else. And like,
does the Bible rank sin? Is one sin worse than the other?
No, they're all the same, kind of.
They're cool sins. So he and I did like a sin. I don't know. Have we spoken about this on a podcast already?
I think we alluded to it, but we didn't like actually go into detail. So me and Adam sat down. I can't remember. It was like about a year ago, probably. And it was... This kind of gets into like something a little deeper. Like the whole reason this podcast came about is me and Adam would have these long conversations for the last 10 years on the phone, hours at night, just talking about politics and the human condition and all of this shit. And we're just like, all thought, right? We were just like, oh, we have all these problems, we want to solve them. And then there was no action. This is our action. This is us trying to make sense of all these long conversations we had. For instance, this one, like we spent hours. Adam made a spreadsheet going over the 7 sins, because that's what Adam does.
That's my thing.
So we listed the 7 sins.
Like, let's organize this.
And then we went through each of them, like lust, like where do I rank 1 to 10? You know, lust for me is bad. I'm a 10. Like that is my sin. That is the one. Lust, you know, and then each one, gluttony, you know, and then gluttony's, you always like associate it with food, but I think it's just like when you do things to excess, like the person that always drinks too much, like I can be pretty gluttonous. And then sloth, and we went through all of them, and you know, the worst score you could have is 70, you know, a Buddhist monk is probably like 0. And then where do we fall? And I think we were real close, but very different sins.
We ended up both at like, I think
42 and 42 and a half, I think.
50, was 40? Yeah.
It was 42 or 43, somewhere in there.
43 and 43 and a half or something like that. Yeah.
It was real close.
And,
and it was a fun thought experiment, because you're like, okay, like where can I, because you're
improve.
The idea is the lowest score possible.
But why?
Why is the lowest score?
I don't think any of those things are necessarily bad.
Again, it's context, right? Like,
or maybe like, I guess gluttony could be bad. What are the other?
Gluttony, lust is pretty bad. Envy, because his is envy. What was that your worst one?
Greed.
Yeah.
Wrath. Sloth.
Everybody's lazy, but like some people are really lazy.
I guess, but I don't. That's where I don't.
It's not necessarily like let's get to 0. That's not always the goal.
No,
it's
I know
just
you guys like joking around, but like honestly,
also just being self-aware. And then we also wanted to rate one of our friends who is completely off batshit crazy. And we're like, where does he fall into all this? Because it was also an aggregate of us, right? It was like, where do I think I am? And then he would give his perspective, like, oh, you might be a little worse at that, you know? And then, or sometimes even I'd be like, I'm bad at that. And he's like, no, you're not. I'm like, oh. Like, I'm not, like, I have a little bit of greed, but, like, not really. Like, I'm not, like, a super greedy person. I'm greedy with my time, but not, like, money means nothing to me.
I just don't like the connotation of it being negative. Like, if you're a little lazy, you're not a bad person. You're not going to hell.
But I think if you...
we were taking the religious context completely out of it. It's just like, yeah.
Well, but the,
good.
religious things, it's not, like, I'm not a very religious person, but, like, I understand why religion existed for as long as it did, and like what its use was. Like, we should probably be kind of steering away from that. Like we're really civilized and really intelligent now. We can kind of like extrapolate beyond that, but there's still core things in there about the human condition, and there are like the 7 sins, and we all,
they're pretty all encompassing.
yeah. Well, and like being very envious is going to be detrimental.
Well, yeah, that's
being very lustful is going to be detrimental. Being very gluttonous or very sloth-like, it's super lazy people aren't going to get anywhere. So it was more of just like self-reflection, but it was. I challenged people to do it because it was kind of fun. It was fun to do with somebody else too, to like kind of hold me accountable.
Yeah, find a best friend who's not a narcissist and do it. It's really fun. And you'll discover a lot about yourself. Like, am I really that envious? Yeah, dude. Serious? You call that guy with a Porsche a prick for no reason. He was just standing there.
Yeah, like nothing's worse than seeing I I'm not super envious of other people.
You know what I think is the worst thing you can do as a person?
What?
Maybe not the worst, but it's be hypocritical.
Yeah,
Hypocrites
totally.
That's my problem with politicians. That's my problem with religion. That's my problem with just people in general. Like when they're, and
it doesn't take an expert to read the Bible and go, there's some hypocrisy here.
And I don't mean like, okay, we're all flawed. Like I love animals, I eat chicken. Like, we're all flawed and can't always be completely congruent, but like straight up hypocrites, or it just drives me.
Especially the ones that grandstand and virtue signal, because a lot of the things, a lot of the things I'm talking about here, like, and I'm like, hey, this is something you can do better. Like I'm guilty of to some extent, but the people that are really like virtuous about it, right? If you don't do this, you're gonna get hit with righteous indignation.
You know what my favorite hypocrisy is? It's one that I live by. I'm joking, by the way. Obviously, this is satirical. The people who are against vaccines don't tell me I can get a vaccine are the same people that want to order women to have abortions. Like, I want autonomy over my body, but you don't get autonomy over your body.
That was one of the most fucking frustrating things. Like women everywhere were like, really? Really?
Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And I've people right now are going to lose their minds. People are hearing this because like, no, it's different. And I'm like, explain to me the logic. Please explain to me how me forcing you to get a vaccine is any different than me forcing you to get an abortion. Please tell me the difference. Like, how about it just comes down to people get to choose what they are going to do with their bodies, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. And I get that's where the argument is well, the kid doesn't have a choice, and But
those are the same people. Oh, all right, so you're adopting children then? You're donating to
Yeah, they're also the same people that don't want welfare.
Yeah.
So let's force these women to have. Let's force them to have their kids.
Protect the fetus until they start breathing.
Yeah. Then we don't.
Pro-birth,
then I don't.
Life. That shit drives me nuts.
Yeah.
But I know as a comedian, he finds like people who are stupid. But there was like an anti-abortion rally, and he was asking all of them like, so how many kids have you adopted? And not a single one of them had adopted a kid. Or it's like you don't really care. You don't really care. You just want your values.
It's virtue signaling. It's just like, I'm a good person because it doesn't matter that I'm an alcoholic and I'm terrible to my family, but I'm gonna virtue signal that I think unborn fetuses need spoken up for.
So I think that a lot of the like hard takes that people take on like issues like that are issues that don't necessarily affect them. Because issues where you actually have to solve a problem are very difficult. Like, okay, like how do we get a floor underneath everybody? And it's like, those are difficult. But then when you're talking about like abortion and you're like a 60-year-old dude, it's like, that doesn't affect you. You don't really care, right? And then, when you're anti-gay, it doesn't affect you. You don't care. And then your daughter comes out as lesbian or whatever, and then you care. Right? But you don't have to, because as long as it doesn't affect you, as long as it's not in your circle, then you can just like, I'll just take a hard stance against it for no reason at all. And it's the most bizarre thing. It's like abortion. Same deal. I think if everybody says this isn't like the first time the idea's ever been spoken, but if men could get pregnant, abortions would be illegal.
Yeah.
And there would be no question about it, period.
They'd probably be promoted. You'd probably get money for doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I understand the argument to a certain degree.
Right. It's
like,
not,
I do get
it's nuanced.
Where some people have like a hard time with it. But the idea that just because you have a hard time with it means it's not like, it's not up to you. And like but the thing is, there's so many things we could do to be preventing that in the first place that they also don't want to do, like saying sex or gay in school, or like, you know, any sort of sex education. Like, what if birth control was free? What if we had universal health care? Then women maybe wouldn't be in that situation. Like, I'm really curious if, here's the other thing too, in Texas, I think women being murdered is going to go up a lot because they're going to get pregnant.
Oh yeah, you like those crime docs.
Yeah, I'm obsessed. And their partners are going to be like, can't have that. And domestic violence is going to go way up towards women, I think.
I hope you're wrong.
Well,
I hope I'm wrong too. But
abortions are also, they're going to happen anyway. Like, you're not just going to be able to ban them. So all you're doing now is like preventing them from being done in a safe, you know, setting.
It's the same argument for like legalizing drugs, right? Like by making them illegal, you make it much more dangerous of an activity that people are going to do regardless.
Right.
Absolutely. It's not going to stop. People aren't going to stop having sex. People aren't going to suddenly be abstinence only.
There's going to be a whole like algorithm on fucking Instagram of like how to do abortions at home. Safe, you know, like
that's the issue of being a sanctimonious asshole, is like you are imposing your idea of what a morally righteous person is. And a lot of the time, like you said, they're fucking hypocrites and they're just projecting because they know they're not good at it. And so they're just like, but if I say it and I'm loud about it, then therefore like nobody will suspect me of like having 5 abortions or being an adulterer or whatever, you know?
Or like, that's the thing I was getting at with like how do you rank sin? Like, how you're allowed to sin. Everyone sins according to religion, but theirs is worse and theirs isn't allowed. Why? Why is theirs different than yours? Like, who cares?
I mean,
just to say it in their context, you know. Obviously, I don't think anything's a sin.
A lot of it's control.
Yeah.
Like you look at some of the Islamic religions, and like they make certain things sound bad because then they can control the populace, and it's archaic and probably not great. But what are you gonna?
What's control and money? Capitalism is completely wrapped up in the Protestant religion.
To me, it's like
not just Protestant, but like any sort of Christianity. Like there's a lot of like really strong connections from way back when to now, and it's all still about who's in power.
Think about it logically. Like, what would be the incentive structure? Like, is there incentive for somebody to make up religion, right? At any point in the prehistoric ages, right? Before any kind of technology. Is it more likely that God came down, or like some individual possessed the ability to understand the word of God, where nobody else could? Or is it more likely that somebody wanted power and found this interesting neat mechanism?
You look at how a cult starts. It's the same thing. Some guy says, I have a connection with a higher power. Listen to me. And through conviction and charisma, people, okay. And then also, like, there's so much unknown out there. Some people just go, okay, that's easier I'm just going to believe that. And then it makes everything else easier. Like my day-to-day stuff is much easier just knowing, like, well,
when someone else tells you what to do, sometimes I make a joke about sometimes I would think I would join a cult so I didn't have to think so much.
Yeah.
Just be like, my job's making the salad, and just like, that's your life, and that'd be easy. But I think religion is a natural thing to come up with. Like almost every culture has some sort of religion. Like it makes sense that we would try to figure out
unexplainable things,
how the world came to be. Like that makes sense. But you're right. It's someone who found out that they could kind of control others that led to.
Well, look at the Book of Eli, like that movie, right? That guy wants the Bible so bad because he knows this is such a powerful tool to control people. If I get this, I control I can just really, especially when people are desperate. You know, that's why guys like Trump are so fucking terrifying, because they emerge as cult leaders
out of the desperation. People talk about Trump like he's this like horrible, plague on society, but you can say one way or the other. I have my own opinions on it, but is he the cause of all of our troubles, or is he a symptom of an underlying disease that we have failed miserably to address? And so like, that's why I hate when the liberals are like, oh man, if only we had like an articulate, eloquent Obama in place. And I'm like, what? Like, to me, Trump is a symptom of neoliberal and neoconservative policies that were perpetuated through Clinton and Bush and previous Bush and started with Reagan and perpetuated through Obama. And they all kind of did the same thing. And then you see this wealth gap exacerbate like crazy, and then people are desperate. And then what happens when people get desperate? You see authoritarians start to rise. You see cult leaders on the rise. And that's what happens because people don't know where else to turn because they've exhausted all the resources for 40 years trying to change the system. Doesn't work. Well, this guy says he can change it by being an outsider, like never mind that he's a billionaire. Like, and
he's not an outsider, man. He's in the same circle. He's just the extreme narcissist who wants to be the dictator.
I miss the memes though.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, Alec Baldwin is Trump on SNL. I mean, it just doesn't get any better.
And he had to go and kill somebody. Oh, now you don't get to do it anymore. Jeez.
Yeah, we forget about that. It's really crazy how our attention spans are so short. Like, it is just
24-hour news cycle. It's what happens when everything's interconnected and globalized, man.
Yeah, and it's just gonna get worse and worse and worse and worse. It's like we always joke about 9/11. Like, we don't even talk about that anymore. Like, there's some crazy shit that happened there, and people just go, whatever. It was a long time ago. Who died in the oceans? The billionaires died. Wait, there's an alien craft somewhere. I think that's way more interesting.
And that's why, like, I like the idea of aliens, and I think it's very innocuous. I think it's
for the most part
pleasant. Yeah. It can be distracting to issues that are fundamentally affecting people. But I also get, like, if you're always focusing on these issues, not everybody's like me, where it's like, how can I solve all of these problems that exist in society? Some people just need a reprieve, and I understand that. So. All of these things that we talk about, like, hopefully they're not too overwhelming for people, right? We like to have fun too.
Yeah, I don't think they're overwhelming. I think everybody is worried about the human condition and themselves and their family and those around them in their communities. And like you said, most people are good. And I think most people want to see good done. It's just, you got to sift through it. And that's the hard part. But hey, that's why we're here. We'll sift through it and try to...
Yeah, we're going to solve all of the problems of society.
Not trying to solve them, just like let's sift through them a little bit. Because I know most people just don't have time to, like, dude, for the longest time, I didn't know shit about anything. Because it's hard to, like, do all the research.
And I would like to, take this moment to encourage people. Like, I know that we're not going to have a lot of viewers for some period of time, maybe ever. But anybody who makes it to this point in the video, if you have any ideas or complaints about what we said that you'd like us to bring up on the podcast, we'd love to. We encourage and welcome open debate and challenges to our belief systems. Because if we have our belief systems challenged, and there's validity and merit to it, then that just means that our belief systems going forward are going to be that much better. So please, in the comments below.
Anything you want to talk about, Lindsey?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to plug your nonprofit?
Sure.
Right on.
Well, obviously add the links to the...
I have two. So I didn't really talk about this, but I work for a animal-assisted therapy ranch in Lakewood. It's a really small mental health agency, but they do amazing work with rescued animals who rescue people. It's kind of our tagline. That's called Animal Assisted Therapy Programs of Colorado. Super awesome resource. And then the treatment center I work for, we work with kids who have been hurt by loved one's addiction, and that's the Hazelden Betty Ford Center.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then I'll put links for each of these in the description of the... so yeah, look in the description below and you'll find links to both places. I'll reach out to you about specifically what those websites are.
Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for enlightening us with your wisdom and putting up with our theatrics and absurdities.
Thanks for having me.
I had so much fun. Thank you so much for coming.
Awesome.
Yeah, no problem.
See you later, everybody.